Chapter 2259, Snatching Loot. The moment the Storm Serpent King died, Shi Feng's experience bar skyrocketed. Since he hadn't been a part of a raid team, that last hit had allowed him to claim nearly half of the Storm Serpent King's EXP. The boss definitely awarded a lot of EXP. I really got my money's worth for that Tier 4 magic scroll. Shi Feng was quite satisfied with his rising experience bar. Shi Feng had already reached level 90, and normally, it would take him 4 or 5 days, at least, to fill his experience bar. However, the Storm Serpent King wasn't the usual boss. Sea monsters originally already granted more EXP than ordinary monsters, and combined with the fact that the Storm Serpent King was king class, it granted even more abundant EXP than a world boss of the same level. Each player would receive a sizable amount of EXP if they split it between 2 fleets. It was easy to imagine how much EXP Shi Feng had earned by monopolizing nearly half of the Storm Serpent King's EXP. In less than a second, Shi Feng had risen to level 91. After 2 more seconds, he reached level 92. His experience bar only began to slow after he had climbed to level 93. Eventually, Shi Feng's experience bar stopped at 24% of level 93. Not even he had expected to receive so much EXP. Once the Storm Serpent King had died, the various major powers in the sea zone went mad, charging toward the boss's corpse without any hesitation. Quick! Get the loot! Everyone's eyes were bloodshot as they rushed to claim the items. A mythic-ranked king-class sea monster's loot was unimaginably tempting to current players. Not even the various superpowers upper echelons could resist. Thousands of ships sped toward the sinking sea monster's corpse. The Storm Serpent King's corpse slowly began to disintegrate, and orbs of light began to appear around it. These orbs of light were none other than the boss's loot. However, unlike ordinary boss's loot, the Storm Serpent King didn't drop a single pile of items. Instead, the items scattered, floating through the air. By the time the loot reached the water's surface, a significant distance separated each orb. Players would have to swim for quite some time to get from one item to another. This setting prevented players from claiming all of the Storm Serpent King's loot for themselves. The Storm Serpent King had dropped a very large number of items. Easily more than 300 items had scattered within 200 yards of the boss's corpse, their beautiful lights decorating the area. Unfortunately, none of these players had the patience to admire the graceful scene. They all rushed toward the globes with everything they had. The various superpowers, on the other hand, began to work together to claim the items as if they had already negotiated a deal. They formed a barricade around the area, preventing outsiders from approaching the Sea of Lights. If you won't let us claim any of the treasure, you should forget about getting any, either. The various adventurer teams didn't need long to figure out the superpowers' goals. Instead of speeding toward the floating orbs, they put themselves in range of the superpowers' AoE attacks, launching an assault. The adventurer teams had an overwhelming numerical advantage. Even if they weren't a match for the superpowers' quality, they could make up for it by swarming their opponents. The various adventurer teams were fully capable of standing up to the various superpowers as equals. For a time, cannon fire filled the sea zone, especially near the Sea of Lights and the Storm Serpent King's corpse. Flying cannonballs blanketed the ocean, and anyone that tried to enter the area died instantly. Some of the superpowers, who thought their defenses were strong enough, had tried to send mysterious iron speedboats to claim the loot, yet in the end, the ships and crew were blown to smithereens. What should we do, guild leader? Blue Bamboo grew very anxious as she looked at this scene. Despite how close to the boss they were, ships had begun to fire at them before they had a chance to claim any of the loot. Moreover, far more ships attacked than when Starlink had assaulted them earlier. As a result, they had to distance themselves from the loot. Superpowers and adventurer teams hammered the loot area with constant attacks, preventing anyone from getting close to the dropped items. Anyone that dared approach the loot would become everyone's enemy, and every ship in the area would attack. Not even the various superpowers dared to approach the area, stuck in a stalemate with the adventurer teams while they tried to think of a solution. Not even a bronze sailboat would last long against thousands of ships. Wait here. I'm going to give it a try, Shifeng said after giving the matter some thought. The various adventurer teams and superpowers kept a close eye on the loot, and as more time passed, it would become harder to get one's hands on those items. At this rate, the adventurer teams and superpowers would be forced to sit down and negotiate terms, or the various superpowers would reveal a trump card to clear the area by force. Regardless of which outcome occurred, Shifeng wouldn't get anywhere near the Storm Serpent King's items. If he wanted to claim his share, he'd have to brave the cannon fire. Shifeng activated the 7 Luminaries' Rings Gale domain and flew straight toward the loot area. Since he was significantly smaller than the Thunder Eagle, the ships would have a very hard time targeting him. In addition, Shifeng was far more agile than the Thunder Eagle, and with Tier 3 reaction speed, he had no trouble dodging the monotonous cannon fire. Black flames approaching the loot. Kill him. Those items are ours. Many players quickly noticed Shifeng, and none of them showed any mercy as they bombarded him together. Cannonballs and energy beams flooded the loot area. The various powers attacked Shifeng with even more ferocity than their assault on the Storm Serpent King. Does Black Flame really think he can snatch the loot by relying on his own strength? When Modern Rain saw the various powers target Shifeng, the corners of his lips curled to form a delighted grin. While the idea was that everyone would have an opportunity to claim some of the Storm Serpent King's loot, the true outcome of this raid would be based on the later negotiations. The quantity and quality of items each power would receive would be determined by their strength. This was also why Elder Wu had dared to offer Shifeng a teleportation stone to the Tower of 4 Gods. Shifeng seemed to have some difficulty dodging the various powers' attacks, and as he got closer to the loot area, the more concentrated the attacks became. Some superpowers had even begun to use their basic mana pulse cannons against the swordsman. Not only did the basic mana pulse cannons' attacks possess a huge, 20-yard radius AoE, but they also carried incredible power. Anna was only able to stop a few of the shots with her yin-yang pillar. How ruthless! The superpower's bombardment astonished Shifeng. Basic mana pulse cannons were war weapons. Installing them on a city's walls was troublesome enough, and trying to install them on a ship was even more of a challenge. Installing a single basic mana pulse cannon would cost around 70,000 gold, and once it had been installed, it couldn't be removed. If the ship sank, all of the invested money would go to waste. As a mana pulse cannon's energy beam swiftly approached, Shifeng gritted his teeth and activated Absolute Domain, gaining damage immunity for 10 seconds. Although the skill protected him from damage, he wasn't immune to the resulting impact. That one hit nearly plunged him into the ocean. Fortunately, basic mana pulse cannons had a very long cooldown. Even if multiple superpowers had them equipped, they couldn't fire unceasingly at Shifeng. A second later, Shifeng entered the loot area. Cannonballs continued to buzz through the area, but Shifeng's basic attributes were incredibly high. Even if a cannonball hit him, it barely affected his movement. However, since the various powers concentrated their cannon fire, Shifeng only caught a glimpse of a few items. He couldn't tell what any of the other items were. With little choice, Shifeng dashed for the items that were closest to him and those surrounded by dense mana. 1 item. 2 items. 3 items. Shifeng picked up more items, and the various superpowers went mad, firing 1 mana pulse cannon at him after another. Die. Kill him. Those treasures are mine. Lu Xingluo's eyes were almost fully red with rage as he watched Shifeng claim the loot. With how bright the light globes were, it was easy to watch them vanish from so far away. According to Lu Xingluo's count, Shifeng had already picked up 17 items, which was likely even more than Starlink would get after the negotiations ended. Unfortunately, no matter how loudly Lu Xingluo bellowed, it didn't affect Shifeng's looting spree. With less than a second of Absolute Domain's duration, Shifeng sighed as he pulled a Tier 1 instantaneous teleportation scroll from his bag. He activated the scroll immediately, vanishing from the loot area. Chapter 2260, Big Harvest. The various powers' craze grew even more intense after Shifeng had left the loot area. In less than 10 seconds, as many as 26 light globes had disappeared from the sea of lights. The Storm's Serpent King had only dropped a little over 300 items, and even if each participating power only received one, there wouldn't be enough items for everyone. And now, Shifeng had gotten away with nearly 1/10 of the King-class sea monster's loot. The most infuriating part about all of it was how little Shifeng had contributed to the raid. The various powers, on the other hand, had lost a large number of speedboats. The imbalance of the situation only incited a deep hatred for Shifeng. Kill him. Kill him at all costs. Some particularly furious superpowers stopped focusing on the loot area and fired their mana pulse cannons when they found where Shifeng had reappeared. The various adventurer teams saw their opportunity. With the loot in a single location, the various superpowers could guard the items easily, but now that Shifeng had taken some of these items and teleported elsewhere, the Storm's Serpent King's loot had been split. This would make safeguarding the loot a much greater challenge for the various superpowers, which presented an opportunity they could take advantage of. The various adventurer teams immediately used their trump cards against Shifeng. Tier 4 Magic Scroll, Spatial Lock. Tier 4 Magic Scroll, Soul Chaser. Tier 4 Magic Scroll, Stormy Weather. Any adventurer team that could survive on Dragonheart Island, especially the island's top 10, was far stronger than an ordinary adventurer team. Even the weakest of them had a foundation that could rival a pseudo-super first-rate guild. These top 10 adventurer teams might not possess large-scale war weapons like the basic mana pulse cannons, but acquiring Tier 4 magic scrolls wasn't impossible. Spatial Lock would prevent all players in an area from teleporting, while Soul Chaser would lock the target in place, allowing the user to keep track of their position for a certain time. As for Stormy Weather, it summoned a powerful magic barrier that trapped targets within. All three spells were Tier 4 and practically impossible for current players to escape. These people are insane. Swimming Dragon paled as he watched the magic barrier form around them. Do they really need to go this far? Tier 4 magic scrolls were incomparably precious. Although they were not as valuable as epic items, each Tier 4 magic scroll was worth half as much, yet the adventurer teams below had used 3 Tier 4 magic scrolls in a row. Their small party had practically no hope of escape now. This kid really is amazing. He actually snatched 26 items on his first try. I doubt we'll even get that many after the negotiations, the masked man beside Elder Wu commented. He sighed ruefully, however, and continued, "It's a pity that this is a superpowers game. How could it be so easy to steal food from a tiger's mouth?" Even if the various adventurer teams hadn't attacked Shifeng, the superpowers would certainly take him down. Shifeng had simply taken too much of the loot. Worse, he had gotten close enough to pick and choose which items he took. Even if he hadn't taken the best of the loot, he definitely hadn't claimed the worst of it. It didn't take much effort to determine an item's quality based on the mana density around it. Shifeng had taken at least 10% of the loot's total value. How could the various superpowers afford to let Shifeng and his party leave with their lives? He is a fool that doesn't recognize his own limitations, the masked woman coldly commented. If he hadn't been so stubborn, he would have acquired a Tower of 4 Gods teleportation stone, at least. Now, he'll have nothing at all. The masked woman was still annoyed with Shifeng's prior behavior. 13 Thrones was a bona fide super guild and had existed in the virtual gaming world for nearly a century. Moreover, it occupied a significant portion of God's domain's eastern continent. Countless powers sought an alliance with the guild, yet Shifeng refused to cherish the opportunity he had been offered. Hence, she was quite pleased to see him in such a precarious situation. Even mythic monsters would have trouble escaping the Tier 4 Stormy Weather's magic barrier. Surrounded by so many enraged powers in such a cramped space, Shifeng wouldn't even escape death if he had multiple vulnerability skills. Guild leader Black Flame, we're in trouble. With us trapped in this barrier, we'll become moving targets for the powers below us, Melody stated grimly as she looked at the magic barrier that had completed around them. Targeted by several thousand ships, not even Anna could protect them from every attack. Moreover, the various powers had marked their souls. Even if they dove into the ocean, there was nowhere they could hide. These powers certainly came prepared. Shifeng smiled at the magic barrier surrounding them. "You're still in the mood to smile at a time like this, big brother Black Flame?" Blue Bamboo whined when she saw his grin. They had gone to great lengths to claim some of the Storm Serpent King's loot, yet before they had a chance to inspect the items, they were going to die. It was a huge loss. "Here, take these," Shifeng said as he took out 2 tokens made of 7 luminaries crystals. He then handed Thoughtful Rain and Melody 1 each. 7 luminaries crystal. Melody's eyes nearly fell from their sockets when she saw the token in her hand. At this stage of the game, everyone in God's domain knew how valuable 7 luminaries crystals were. They were necessary for upgrading players' mind space systems, which was useful both in-game and in the real world. Even when a large guild like Ninth Heaven found some, they only obtained 2 or 3 units at most, yet the Palm's Eyes token in Melody's hand was made entirely of 7 luminaries crystal. By her estimates, the token should be more than 40 units. It could easily fetch an astronomical sum on the market. One wouldn't even have a problem trading it for 2 or 3 epic items. However, Melody quickly discovered that this token was not as simple as it appeared. As she held the token, the ambient mana began to gather around her. As a half-elf, she was far more sensitive to mana than human players. Hence, she could tell that the mana around her had grown at least 20% denser during the brief moment she held the crystal token. This was definitely a priceless treasure. Stop daydreaming. This is the teleportation stone to enter the Tower of 4 Gods. Melody, take Dragon with you. Rain, you'll take Bamboo. Teleport away from here now. Shifeng barked when he noticed Melody's dazed expression. Although he had blindly picked up loot, he had obtained quite a few items by searching for higher mana density. Among these items, he had claimed 5 Tower of 4 Gods teleportation stones. These teleportation stones were incomparably valuable. Not even a mythic-ranked King-class sea monster would drop more than 30 teleportation stones on its first kill, yet Shifeng had claimed 5 for himself. He had profited greatly from this trip. If 13 Thrones people learned this, they'd die from envy. With so many superpowers participating in the raid, even a top-ranked super guild like 13 Thrones would be lucky to claim 3 or 4 teleportation stones after the negotiations. The ordinary superpowers would likely be limited to a single stone. The Tower of 4 Gods had been created by an ancient civilization for the gods. As long as one had one of the tower's teleportation stones, they could enter the tower from anywhere in God's domain, even from a special place like the Thunder God's secret land. A measly Tier 4 magic scroll couldn't disable such a powerful teleportation stone. Hearing Shifeng's orders, realization dawned on Melody and Swimming Dragon, and they flashed the swordsman a grateful look. The Tower of 4 Gods entry slots were beyond precious. The various superpowers' madness to reclaim the teleportation stones made that clear. Receiving an entry slot was akin to encountering a golden opportunity to further one's development, yet most experts would never have such a chance. No one would have been surprised if Shifeng had given a teleportation stone to Thoughtful Rain and Blue Bamboo since they were Zero Wing members, but he had handed Melody and Swimming Dragon, both outsiders, entry slots. Not even a superpowers guild leader would be so generous. Alright, hurry it up. If you don't go now, it'll be too late. Shifeng urged his companions as the ships below prepared to open fire. Melody and Swimming Dragon nodded and stopped hesitating. Following which, Shifeng, Melody, and Thoughtful Rain began to activate their teleportation stones. A moment later, 3 large-scale magic arrays enveloped Shifeng's group. The arrays remained intact even as the various powers' cannon fire struck them. Similarly, Shifeng and his comrades were safe within the magic arrays. What's going on? A defensive magic array? When the players below realized that Shifeng's group hadn't taken any damage from their bombardment, they were stunned. They had fired several thousand cannonballs, in addition to a few energy beams from basic mana pulse cannons. Each of those energy beams contained Tier 4 power, and they were even capable of punching a hole through a city's defensive magic array, yet they had done nothing to the array protecting Shifeng's party. While the various powers stared at Shifeng's group in confusion, a spatial tear opened before the flying players. Shifeng and his companions then transformed into 5 streaks of light as they shot through the tear, vanishing. They're gone. How is that possible? Didn't we seal the area with a Tier 4 magic scroll? Frustrated and confused, the various major powers wondered how Shifeng's group had managed to escape. The various superpowers' upper echelons, on the other hand, had turned ashen. There was only one way they could think of that Shifeng had been able to ignore the cannon fire and Tier 4 spatial locks effects. He had used the Tower of 4 Gods teleportation stones. Chapter 2261, Land of Gods. After Shifeng's group had left the sea zone, silence fell over the area. Now that he's used the teleportation stone to escape, there's no point in chasing him, the masked man beside Elder Wu said. With a slight hint of admiration in his tone, he continued, he managed to secure 26 items by himself. He'll likely have benefited the most from raiding the Storm Serpent King. 13 Thrones wasn't even likely to secure 3 teleportation stones after the negotiations, yet Shifeng had used 3 to escape. Since the swordsman had gotten away with 26 items in total, he had certainly acquired more than just 3 teleportation stones. In other words, Shifeng had walked away with more teleportation stones than 13 Thrones would see from this raid. The participating powers have severely suffered to slay the Storm Serpent King. Since Shifeng stole so much of the loot, he's made every one of them his enemy, the masked woman stated dryly. He might have escaped with the treasure, but he nor Zero Wing have any hope of developing on Dragonheart Island. Many superpowers had gathered on Dragonheart Island, and one couldn't discount the top 10 adventurer teams that led various independent powers. Not even 13 Thrones dared to provoke all of these powers at once, yet Shifeng had done just that. His very survival on Dragonheart Island would be a miracle. Dragonheart Island was an important trade hub. No one who wanted to develop in the Sea of Death could avoid the island. If the various land-based powers wanted to further their development, they couldn't ignore their naval expansion. Resources were far more abundant in the Sea of Death than they were on land, and the sea had the highest concentration of neutral races. Furthermore, many resources required naval transportation. If a power ignored its naval development, it would have to depend on other powers for many aspects of its growth. This would severely restrict its development. This was why the various powers, particularly the first-rate and stronger powers, frantically invested in their naval development. And yet, he managed to secure quite a few teleportation stones for the Tower of 4 Gods. His future might not be as bleak as you think, the masked man countered while shaking his head. He very much disagreed with the masked woman. The Tower of 4 Gods had existed long before the Great Destruction. Not even the ancient gods could destroy the tower. After the Great Destruction, the Tower of 4 Gods had been involved in the rise of many kingdoms and empires. That fact alone made it clear that the tower had plenty of opportunities to offer. Alright, that's enough. Whether that kid has provoked the various powers or not is none of our business. For now, focus on the remaining treasures. Elder Wu snapped, glancing at the masked man and woman. Shifeng's success in seizing many of the dropped items had surprised him, but that was all. He felt nothing about the situation beyond that. Meanwhile, among Starlink's fleet. Guild leader, what should we do? We have no way to reach Black Flame now that he's teleported to the Tower of 4 Gods, Bright Dawn asked, staring at where Shifeng had been with a twisted expression. Oh. We have no way. Lu Xinglua suddenly laughed. How can we have no other method to reach him? Since Black Flame dares to steal food from the tiger's mouth, I will send him to hell. Have someone spread the rumor that Black Flame has obtained a fragmented legendary item and a large number of entry slots to the Tower of 4 Gods. I want to see how he intends to survive in God's domain as the rumor spreads. The Storm Serpent King was a mythic-ranked King-class sea monster. Although Lu Xinglua did not know if the boss would actually drop fragmented legendary items, this had been the boss's first kill. As far as the public knew, it wasn't impossible for the Storm Serpent King to drop a fragmented legendary item. Every player in the Stormy Sea Zone had watched Shifeng snatch a bunch of items. Meanwhile, a fragmented legendary item was so rare that not even every superpower in God's domain had one. It was easy to imagine how tempting a fragmented legendary item would be. A fragmented legendary item wasn't like a flying mount, which bound to a player upon use. A flying mount wouldn't drop if its owner died, but fragmented legendary items were a different story. Understood. I'll get it done immediately. Bright Dawn said, a big grin appearing on his face. Not only had Shifeng provoked Dragonheart Island's various powers, but now, the public would assume he held a priceless treasure. He had no hope of avoiding death now. Shortly after Shifeng's group had disappeared, the various superpowers and adventurer teams resumed their intense struggle over the remaining loot. When Shifeng and the others opened their eyes, they were flabbergasted by the scene before them. They were surrounded by a galaxy of stars. It was simply beautiful. Waiting within the core of this galaxy was a tower of immeasurable height. Not only was the tower's aura unimaginably powerful, but it also felt strangely eternal. The god's divine might couldn't even rival 100% of the tower's aura. So, this is the Tower of Four Gods? Shifeng was overwhelmed with emotion as he gazed at the colossal set of golden doors before him. The doors were easily several thousand meters tall. He had seen gods in God's domain before, and they couldn't even compare to these golden doors, much less the Tower of Four Gods itself. If the five of them hadn't stood so far away from the doors, the pressure radiating off of the doors would have been enough to flatten them. Even from this distance, Shifeng felt as if he were carrying several hundred kilograms on his back. The smallest movement was incredibly difficult, let alone walking forward. He had only ever heard about the Tower of Four Gods in the past, never actually visited it. However, after standing here now, he finally understood why even Tier 6 God-ranked experts had repeated visited this place. The eternal energy in this space was simply astounding. Eternal energy was far superior to elemental mana. Just by being in this space, Shifeng's mind was unprecedentedly clear. He could now understand and solve many of the problems he had faced before with ease. The Tower of Four Gods was definitely the perfect place for players to improve their combat standards and master their skills and spells. While Shifeng's group was intoxicated on the eternal energy, the phantom of a man appeared from the void. He was over a dozen meters tall and fully equipped in silver armor. The man also radiated a boundless divine might, yet Shifeng couldn't discern any details about this NPC. Outsiders, welcome to the Tower of Four Gods. The man lowered his head to look at Shifeng and the others. Since you have arrived via teleportation stones, according to the agreement the ancient gods had made so long ago, you will be allowed into the tower. The Tower of Four Gods had 7 floors, and each has several trials awaiting you. As you clear these trials, you will be able to ascend within the tower. In return, you will gain more abundant rewards. Each of you will have 3 chances within the Tower of Four Gods. After 3 deaths, your trial will come to an end, and you will be barred from this place for 360 natural days. I hope you cherish this opportunity. If you don't have any questions, you may enter the tower now. After saying so, the man waved a hand. Shifeng and his companions then transformed into 5 streaks of light and vanished through the golden doors. Chapter 2262, Storm Serpent King's Loot. After entering the tower, Shifeng found himself in a vast, endless plain. Packs of wild wolves, each consisting of 3 to 5, wandered this endless plain. These wolves bore 2 heads, and each possessed a pair of glowing, green eyes. Scorching flames enveloped their bodies, and the wolves' eerie auras felt as if they had climbed up from the pits of hell in search of fresh souls. Twin-headed Netherfire Wolf, demonic creature, Lord. Level 93. HP 27000000/27000000. As soon as Shifeng inspected one of the two-headed wolves, the sound of a system notification reached his ears. System: kill 1,500 twin-headed netherfire wolves within 3 days. If you fail to complete this task in the stipulated time, the challenge will automatically be regarded as a failure. So, this is a trial of the Tower of Four Gods? Shifeng breathed a sigh of relief after reading the notification. The first floor's trial was not as difficult as he had assumed. Although he hadn't entered the Tower of Four Gods himself, he had heard quite a bit about it during his previous life. The Tower of Four Gods had a total of 7 floors, and each floor was a world of its own. Meanwhile, each world had a total of 3 trials. These trials were straightforward. Players were only required to kill monsters, nothing else. After all, might was right in God's domain, and everything other than strength was inconsequential. Without sufficient might, the various kingdoms and empires wouldn't have defeated the other powerful races and ruled over the God's domain continent for tens of thousands of years. The rewards for clearing the tower's trials were secondary to most expert players. The experience was far more important. Due to the Tower of Four Gods' eternal energy, this was the best place in God's domains for players to train. Not only could players exert their skills and spells to their full potential, but they could also execute combat techniques without worrying about running out of stamina and concentration. Players could rapidly develop their combat standards here. This was also why Tier 6 God-ranked players had still tried to enter the Tower of Four Gods despite their standing. Even for Tier 6 God-ranked players, exerting 100% of Tier 5 skills and spells effects was an extreme challenge, not to mention Tier 6 skills and spells. They had the same issue with their more powerful combat techniques. Unfortunately, not even the mana in a main city could assist Tier 5 and 6 classes. They'd have to rely on a location like the Tower of Four Gods to practice their high-tiered skills, spells, and powerful combat techniques. This feature drove any player that visited the tower to remain within it for as long as possible, rather than rushing through the trials. If they missed this opportunity, they'd have to wait 360 natural days before they could enter the tower again. After a glance at the wandering netherfire wolves, Shifeng sat on the grassy plain and inspected the loot he had obtained from the Storm Serpent King, instead of rushing to kill the nearby monsters. Killing level 93 lords wouldn't be difficult for Shifeng. In fact, this first trial was quite simple. 3 days was more than enough time to kill 1,500 netherfire wolves. Since he had been in such a hurry, he had only spared a glance for the items he had picked up. Now that he had some time, he had to inspect his gains properly. If he had gotten lucky, he might have acquired something that could increase his combat power and his chances of clearing the Tower of Four Gods trials. After several minutes of looking through his harvest, Shifeng took a sharp, deep breath. Most of the 26 items he had picked up were level 90 fine gold and dark gold weapons and equipment. None of the weapons or equipment pieces were epic rank, so they were of no use to Shifeng. If he sold these items, however, the various major powers would fight over them like madmen. Current players were nowhere near level 90, and top-tier level 90 weapons and equipment would provide the various powers an edge over their rivals. Most of the other items were materials from the Storm Serpent King's body, such as Storm Serpent King's scales. All of these materials were epic rank and could increase sailboats' defenses and durability. Of the 2 most valuable items, one was the extremely rare epic material, Spatial Crystal, and the other was a design for the bronze-ranked Storm Speedboat. If the various powers knew that I picked this up, they'd do everything in their power to kill me, Shifeng said, chuckling as he looked at the Storm Speedboat design. The Spatial Crystal could be used to repair the mysterious iron-ranked Hurricane sailboat, but it wasn't nearly as valuable as the Storm Speedboat design. The Hurricane sailboat might be the strongest ship available at this stage of the game, but it couldn't withstand attacks from several thousand ships. If he had enough materials, however, he could produce an unlimited number of bronze speedboats with the Storm Speedboat design. Not even the various superpowers could form a fleet of bronze speedboats, led by a mysterious, iron speedboat, yet now, Zero Wing could. For some time now, Zero Wing had been stockpiling Ancient Origin and Diamond Wood, the two main materials to construct the Storm speedboat. Zero Wing could definitely create the strongest player fleet in the game. This would also resolve the guild's lack of naval strength. Thinking up to this point, Shi Feng even considered leaving the Tower of Four Gods to start production on the Storm speedboats immediately. Fortunately, he suppressed the urge. Entering the Tower of Four Gods hadn't been easy, and if he left now, he'd suffer an incredible loss. The environment he was in would even be helpful to Tier 5 and 6 players, not to mention a Tier 2 player like himself. Finished with his loot, Shi Feng decided to stop wasting time. He stored the spatial crystal and Storm speedboat design and hastily walked toward the nearest pack of twin-headed Netherfire wolves. The 5 Netherfire wolves noticed Shi Feng as soon as he was within 100 yards of the pack. Their perception was far more sensitive than ordinary level 93 lords. The 5 Netherfire wolves were very smart. Like real wolves, they did not move alone. They slowly surrounded Shi Feng and planned their attack from multiple sides, searching for weaknesses. Why are they so intelligent? The Netherfire wolves' behavior surprised Shi Feng. Ordinary level 93 lords couldn't employ such a strategy. Monsters this intelligent generally had combat standards on par with the Trial Tower's 3rd floor. Before Shi Feng could refocus, the 5 Netherfire wolves pounced from 5 different directions. The Netherfire wolves were even larger than a normal lion. If 5 of them attacked together, they could topple a large elephant. However, these Netherfire wolves were still only Lord-ranked monsters. They might be a threat to ordinary Tier 2 players, but their attack speed was too low to be effective against Shi Feng. Their attack patterns were also quite obvious. Shi Feng evaded the Netherfire wolves' attacks with slight movements. As the monsters brushed past him, he brandished Killing Ray and Twilight's Blade. Shadow Blade. Like shooting stars, 10 sword lights sliced at the 5 Netherfire wolves. The impact threw all 5 Netherfire wolves as 2 damages of over -200,000 appeared above each of their heads. The counterattack heavily injured all 5 monsters, and with pained whimpers, they turned back to Shi Feng with fear in their eyes. System: Shadow Blade completion rate 100%, resulting in 150% of skills effect. Skill proficiency +5. 100%? Is this the Tower of Four Gods effect? Shi Feng was stunned to see the system notification. Shadow Blade was a Tier 2 skill. Normally, his completion rate with the skill was only at 90%. He only achieved a 91% or 92% completion rate on rare occasions. Tier 2 skills were far more complex than Tier 1 skills, and if he hadn't had a decade of experience playing God's Domain, he wouldn't even have executed Shadow Blade at 85% completion rate. And yet, despite his casual manner, the results had been so excellent. If he could reliably execute his skills with such a high completion rate, his combat power would increase tremendously. He'd even achieve an overwhelming victory against an opponent with equal attributes and combat standards. Flaming passion began to burn in his eyes. Shi Feng immediately charged at the frightened twin-headed Netherfire wolves in an attempt to replicate the feeling of his previous attack. Chapter 2263, Sacred Training Ground. As soon as Shi Feng stepped forward, the 5 twin-headed Netherfire wolves did something that even surprised Shi Feng. As if they had pre-planned it, the Netherfire wolves turned and fled. They weren't behaving like normal monsters at all. Their intellect is this high? Shi Feng frowned slightly as he watched the monsters flee. He had seen monsters run from players before, but he rarely saw monsters flee the moment they were injured, despite having most of their HP remaining. This wouldn't have been such an issue if he had been hunting monsters in the fields, but he was on a time limit here. If every Netherfire wolf reacted like this trial would be far more difficult than Shi Feng had assumed. These Netherfire wolves' movement speeds were high, and if they split up and fled to other wolf packs, he would need far more time to kill a single Netherfire wolf. A half-step refinement realm expert would very likely fail the trial. However, before these Netherfire wolves could even put a few yards between them and Shifeng, he had already executed void steps and appeared beside one of them. The Netherfire wolf didn't even notice him. My technique execution has improved so drastically. As Shifeng looked down at the oblivious Netherfire wolf beside him, he was shocked. Unlike players, monsters didn't heavily rely on their vision to notice opponents. Trying to approach a monster with a technique like void steps without being detected was a major challenge, akin to using void steps against a void realm expert. Experts wouldn't have to rely on their vision to perceive the world around them once they reached the void realm. Yet now, void steps forced his opponent to ignore more than just his visible presence. When he executed void steps, while bathed in eternal energy, he became one with the environment. Now, even the Netherfire wolf's bestial senses couldn't find him. Before the Netherfire wolf could react, Shifeng slashed at it again with Killing Ray. The sacred sword suddenly vanished, and blood gushed from multiple lacerations on the Netherfire wolf's body. Damages exceeding -100,000 appeared above the Lord's head, one after another, and this all happened in an instant. Secret technique, Lightning Flash. Lightning Flash was a bronze offensive combat technique Shifeng had obtained from the Ore Empire's primordial divine ruins, but like his sword's transmigration, Lightning Flash was far more complex than an ordinary bronze combat technique. Despite having reached the Ascension realm, Shifeng found it difficult to master. Originally, Shifeng had wanted to reach Tier 3 before attempting to master Lightning Flash. However, now that he had the help of eternal energy, he barely managed to execute the technique properly. With just one attack, the Netherfire wolf had lost nearly 1/12 of its HP, yet Shifeng had depleted more than half of his concentration to execute Lightning Flash, and his mental clarity plummeted. It's a pity that I'm still a little off the mark, but at least, I know that it isn't entirely impossible to use Lightning Flash at Tier 2. Regardless of Shifeng's mental state, he was satisfied. Lightning Flash was different from Sword's Transmigration in that it was a fully offensive type combat technique. Although he could attack with Sword's Transmigration, the technique's movements involved defensive maneuvers. The bronze combat technique incorporated both offense and defense. With a fully offensive bronze combat technique, a Void Realm expert could thoroughly suppress a Domain Realm expert if there were a negligible difference between the combatant's basic attributes. However, his Lightning Flash wasn't complete. He could only employ a portion of the technique's true strength. Executing Lightning Slash perfectly meant using a series of 17 attacks and merging them all seamlessly. The technique allowed its user to harm opponents of a higher tier for a brief moment. Unfortunately, Shifeng could only combine 13 attacks right now, barely achieving Lightning Flash's minimum requirement. At this standard, Lightning Flash operated like an advanced combat technique, not a bronze combat technique. After landing the attack, Shifeng adjusted his posture and executed Lightning Flash once more. Within the Tower of Four Gods, his stamina and concentration recovery speeds were far faster than in the outside world. Even if he repeatedly employed bronze combat techniques here, his stamina and concentration would quickly replenish. Naturally, he couldn't waste his time in such a beneficial environment. The first level 93 twin-headed Netherfire wolf fell at Shifeng's hands in less than 20 seconds. Not even a 6-man party of the same level could slay a Netherfire wolf as quickly as Shifeng had. While Shifeng continued to train, Swimming Dragon, Melody, Thoughtful Rain, and Blue Bamboo began to do the same after discovering the Tower of Four Gods' benefits. For 3 days, the 5 of them slew Netherfire wolves without rest. At the rate Shifeng killed the monsters, he could have completed the first trial in less than a day, but he didn't hurry to do so. Instead, he reflected on his actions and practiced Lightning Flash and his Tier 2 skills. He also gained a significant amount of EXP from killing the Netherfire wolves. His leveling speed was just as fast as his normal grinding speed elsewhere. Moreover, the Netherfire wolves also dropped considerably good loot, earning Shifeng a lot of level 90 bronze weapons and equipment. His improvement speed over the 3 days was off the charts. By the time the trial was close to ending, Shifeng could reliably execute Lightning Flash, only consuming 1/3 of his concentration with each use. Unfortunately, he was still limited to 13 slashes. He was missing something. Shifeng only killed the last Netherfire Wolf as the 3-day time limit was nearly up. As the last twin-headed Netherfire Wolf died, the scenery around Shifeng changed again. Although he was still in an endless plain, the monsters had changed. Now, ghost warriors roamed the plain, carrying weapons and shields. These ghost warriors moved in groups of 6, with some on defense, some focusing on melee offense, and others assigned to ranged attacks. They were like a well-rounded raid party for bosses. Ghost Warrior, Undead, Lord, level 93. HP 30,000/30,000,000. System: kill 600 Ghost Warriors within 3 days. If you fail to complete this task in the stipulated time, the challenge will automatically be regarded as a failure. Wasting no time, Shifeng charged at a Ghost Warrior party. The Ghost Warriors didn't attack the moment they noticed Shifeng. Instead, the 2 shield-wielding Ghost Warriors moved to intercept his charge, while the 2 spear-wielding warriors moved behind them. The 2 spear-wielders prepared to attack the instant Shifeng encountered the tanks. Meanwhile, the 2 Ghost Warriors carrying bows spread out to attack Shifeng from the sides. The Ghost Warriors' combat standards were clearly a cut above the Netherfire Wolves. Using the Trial Tower as a reference, they were at the 3rd floor, middle stage standard. If an ordinary Tier 2 expert tried to take on this 6-man monster party, they'd likely struggle to escape, much less defeat their opponents. Fortunately, these Ghost Warriors were no threat to Shifeng. Like the previous trial, he continued to practice his lightning flash. Fighting humanoid monsters would help him improve far faster than fighting beasts. The Ghost Warriors also provided better loot and more EXP than the Netherfire Wolves. The Netherfire Wolves hadn't dropped a single piece of mysterious iron equipment, yet the Ghost Warriors did on occasion. As for the EXP, the Ghost Warriors provided 3 times more than the Netherfire Wolves, which had already granted more EXP than ordinary level 93 lords. As a result, Shifeng's experience bar filled rapidly. By the time Shifeng cleared the second trial, he had reached 94. The scene around Shifeng changed after he cleared the second trial, but when he saw his new opponents, he was astonished. The third trial took place in an ancient coliseum, which was home to 10 fully armed giants. Every one of these giants was Tier 2. They weren't monsters, they were bona fide Tier 2 NPCs. Giant Gladiator, Giant, Tier 2. Level 94. HP 5, 400,000/5, 400,000. The giant race was a talented one. Not only did giants command immeasurable strength, but their earth affinity was unparalleled, as well. They were natural-born warriors. Moreover, unlike players, NPC giants had inherited the giant race's attributes perfectly. They wielded far more combat power than ordinary Tier 2 NPCs. And now, Shifeng had to face 10 of them. System: kill 10 giant gladiators within 1 day. If you fail to complete this task in the stipulated time, the challenge will automatically be regarded as a failure. Chapter 2264, Breaking Through 100%. Although the time limit isn't that short, this trial is far more difficult than the last, Shifeng thought as he observed the 10 giant gladiators standing on the elevated platform in the center of the Colosseum. If a half-step refinement realm expert attempted this challenge, they'd likely need a full set of up-to-date dark gold equipment to have a chance of passing. Unlike monsters, NPCs had many skills and spells under their command. Their combat standards were also leagues above monsters. Moreover, there was a huge difference between NPCs' strength within the same tier. This was due to the individual NPC's weapons and equipment. An NPC in full dark gold equipment would undoubtedly have a huge basic attribute advantage over one in bronze equipment. Of the 10 NPC giants on the platform, the weakest wore bronze equipment, while the strongest was geared in fine, gold-ranked items. With the giant race's innate talents, a human player's basic attributes might not be as high, even fully geared in dark gold equipment. Players could only clear this trial by relying on their techniques. External items and berserk skills were prohibited within the Tower of Four Gods. Players could only rely on their strength to clear the trials. The third trial's difficulty level made the first two trials look like warm-ups, while this was the beginning of the true test. However, Shifeng did not give the matter much thought and approached the elevated platform. After 6 days of training, he had hit a bottleneck. No matter what he tried, he could only perform, at most, 14 slashes with lightning flash. He had only reduced his concentration consumption to 1/4 of his total, as well. He would need far more time to improve with the technique. Hence, instead of wasting an entire day training, without seeing any improvement to his combat power, he decided to clear the first floor's trials and move on to the second floor. The moment Shifeng set foot on the platform, one of the NPC giants stepped forward and moved into the platform center. As the giant reached Shifeng, it swung its two-handed axe at the swordsman. Dense, earth-type mana enveloped the axe. Not only did the earth-type mana increase the axe's weight by a substantial degree, but it also intensified the gravitational force where Shifeng stood, reducing his mobility. A combat technique. Surprise flashed in Shifeng's eyes as the giant's attack approached. Combat techniques were not unique to players. In fact, they had always existed in God's domains. The legacy stone tablets were evidence of this. However, NPCs had a much harder time learning combat techniques than players. Normally, NPCs would only encounter combat techniques after reaching Tier 3. Even so, a small minority were actually capable of executing these combat techniques. Why wouldn't Shifeng be surprised to see this Tier 2 giant use a combat technique against him? Even a basic combat technique could significantly elevate an NPC's combat power. Taking into account that the Tier 2 giant's combat standards were at the Trial Tower's 5th floor early stage, this NPC could easily pummel a half-step refinement realm expert. Only, to Shifeng, the giant's attack was quite crude. He blocked the giant's axe with a light swing of the Twilight Blade, countering with a slash from Killing Ray and taking advantage of the giant's blind spot. Shadow Blade. 10 dazzling stars flew toward the Tier 2 giant. Just as they were about to hit their target, their paths intersected as pairs merged. The 5 resulting stars radiated an even more resplendent glow. System: Shadow Blade completion rate 101%, resulting in 170% of skill's effect. Skill proficiency +10. When the 5 stars collided with the giant, the impact through the NPC, and 5 damages of over -200,000 appeared above his head, one after another. By the time the giant hit the ground, he was momentarily paralyzed. What a powerful effect! The result of Shifeng's counterattack astonished him. After 6 days of continuous training, he could reliably execute Shadow Blade with a 100% completion rate. He certainly hadn't expected to break past that now. As a result of crossing the 100% threshold, Shadow Blade had gained a new effect that paralyzed the target for 1 second. Of course, surpassing a 100% completion rate with a skill was intensely difficult, but after experiencing it, Shifeng had a rough understanding of Shadow Blade's essence. Now, even once he left the Tower of Four Gods, he was confident in achieving a 100% completion rate with the skill. Shifeng appeared by the giant and swung Killing Ray before the paralyzed NPC had time to recover. Lightning Flash. 14 sword lights simultaneously cut through the NPC giant, reducing the giant's HP to a critical low. Shifeng immediately followed up the Twilight Blade, executing Purgatory Pentaslash, removing the last of the giant's HP. The fight with the first giant lasted no more than 3 seconds. The other NPC giants watched from a corner of the arena with grim expressions. "Alright, next," Shifeng demanded, flashing the giants a hungry look. Swimming Dragon and the others would likely struggle to defeat these NPC giants, but Shifeng's basic attributes were even higher than a Tier 3 players of the same level, and his physique and reaction speed were only slightly inferior. If he had trouble with these Tier 2 giants despite his massive advantages, he might as well retire from God's domain now. However, Shifeng had to admit that these NPC giants granted a lot of EXP, even more than great lords of the same level. His experience bar had risen by a sizable chunk after killing the first giant. Unfortunately, the NPC hadn't dropped any loot. Shifeng defeated all 10 NPC giants in less than 5 minutes. As the last NPC died, the scenery changed yet again. This time, Shifeng had been transported into a temple. The instant Shifeng arrived, he sensed that the eternal energy here was far less dense. There was simply no comparison to the first floor's eternal energy. Meanwhile, a large number of snake monsters wandered the temple. Not only were these monsters massive, almost as tall as a 2-story building, but they each had a total of 6 heads as well. 6-headed hell snake, bloodline creature, Lord. Level 94. HP 42,000,000/42,000,000. Bloodline creatures? Shifeng was dumbfounded when he saw the temple's 6-headed hell snakes. He hadn't expected the second floor to be much more of a challenge than the first floor. Bloodline creatures were elite existences among creatures of the same tier. They also possessed bloodline abilities and extraordinary combat power. Not even the Tier 2 giant NPCs were guaranteed to win against these hell snakes in a one-on-one fight. But after his brief shock, Shifeng's face lit up with joy. Bloodline creatures were extremely rare. Even Shifeng only knew of a few places that possessed bloodline creatures. He had considered grinding the Nagas in the Thunder Temple's side temple to collect bloodline power, but it seemed that he could save himself the trip. System, congratulations. You have cleared the first floor's trials and reached the Tower of 4 Gods' second floor. You may choose to rest here for 1 day or begin the second floor's trials immediately. I've been training without rest for quite some time. Even if my mind is clear, my physical body has been, more or less, affected. I should log off and rest for now. After giving the matter some thought, Shifeng decided to accept the system's offer to rest. By the time Shifeng exited his virtual gaming cabin, sunlight streamed into his room. It was already afternoon. Shifeng stretched, suddenly feeling physically powerless. Moreover, he was intensely hungry, and every cell in his body practically screamed for nutrients. He was also quite lightheaded and sleepy. What's going on? Shifeng's physical state surprised him. If he hadn't willed himself awake, he likely would have lost consciousness. Chapter 2265, Tower of 4 Gods Effect. Shifeng rapidly lost stamina due to his severe lack of energy. Ignoring the cause of his deprivation, for now, Shifeng moved to the fridge in his room and retrieved one of the life potions within. He popped the cap and downed the bottle's contents without hesitation. As the life potion flowed down his throat, Shifeng felt a warmth spread throughout his body, and his mind started to clear. After the drink warmed him, his cells devoured the nutrients like ravenous wolves. When he had first consumed the life potion, his body had needed 3 to 5 days to process it, yet now, his body rapidly absorbed its nutrients. After about 10 minutes, Shifeng felt as if he had been resurrected. He had also completely digested the life potion. If any internal force experts saw this, their eyes would likely fall from their sockets. The life potion contained a frightening amount of nutrients, and even an internal force expert would need 3 days to process the powerful drink after training to their physical limits. Moreover, they would have to continue training like a madman during that time. Yet Shifeng had digested the life potion in 10 minutes and still felt as if he needed more. This life potion really is good stuff. Without it, I would have needed around 5 bottles of S-rank nutrient fluid to recover from my starvation, Shifeng inwardly exclaimed as he stared at the empty container in his hand. Although he had been conserving the life potions, he had used far more than he had initially expected. He was already down to his last bottle. Once he was out, his physical and mental progress would plummet. In fact, the life potions were a large part of the reason for his rapid improvement in the Tower of Four Gods. As Shifeng recovered from his hunger and looked around him, he felt as if he had emerged in an entirely new world. To be precise, his perception had sharpened drastically. What's going on? The development stunned Shifeng. It wasn't just the world around him that felt different. He could also sense that his cells had become significantly stronger. Now, he felt that he could achieve a punching strength of 1,000 kilograms even with a casual hit. His reaction speed had also improved. With these changes, his physical control had reached a new level. Shifeng had endured a constant headache over how to improve his reaction speed and physical control. He had never expected to make a breakthrough now. He could push his mental agility to its very limits in God's domain because he had an incredibly powerful body and sufficient reaction speed, but that wasn't the case in the real world. Because of this, he couldn't replicate many of his in-game actions in the real world. Now that his physical fitness and reaction speed had significantly improved, he would be able to exhibit greater strength. Moreover, Shifeng could tell that his physical condition hadn't reached its peak. After making a mental breakthrough, his endocrine system had grown stronger, steadily flooding his bloodstream with more hormones and slowly altering and improving his physical fitness. Have I risen to the Grandmaster standard during my training in the Tower of Four Gods? Shifeng considered the large possibility that he had become a neutralizing Grandmaster throughout his training. He couldn't think of another explanation for the changes his body had experienced. With his superhuman fitness and reaction speed, his overall strength was leaps and bounds greater than Apex internal force experts. He wouldn't need any fancy techniques to take care of Wang Zongquan if the man appeared before him again. He could easily finish the man with a straight punch. For a moment, Shifeng was overwhelmed with the urge to run to the headquarters training room to test his physical state. He still had 2 teleportation stones, which meant he could send 4 more players into the Tower of Four Gods. Wang Zongquan's interruption during the training center's grand opening had merely been an attempt to test the waters. If Lu Xinglua decided to get serious and attack the training center in secret, he would have many methods to catch the training center off guard. An experienced master martial artist like Lei Bao might cope with these secret attacks, but Fire Dance and the others simply weren't strong enough. Moreover, they needed people to protect Zero Wing's main headquarters at all times. If Zero Wing could nurture another Grandmaster, the Zero Wing headquarters and the Heaven's Rumble Training Center's safety would be assured. Neutralizing Grandmasters transcended ordinary human limits. Their highly developed minds utilized a 7th sense, which reached beyond their instinctual 6th sense. Their perception of danger and survivability reached inhuman levels. Even if Lu Xinglua tried to attack Zero Wing from the shadows, he'd be hard-pressed to achieve anything against a neutralizing Grandmaster. Thinking up to this point, Shifeng contacted Liang Jing, asking for a report on Zero Wing's development and gather the guild's upper echelons for a meeting. He intended to discuss the Tower of Four Gods with everyone before making a decision. He only had 4 remaining slots, after all. Zero Wing had been developing smoothing before he had entered the Tower of Four Gods, and according to Liang Jing's report, not only had gentle snow helped her experts level up rapidly after acquiring her flying mount, but she had also hunted down quite a few rare field bosses. As a result, she had collected plenty of resources and equipment for the guild. Meanwhile, Fire Dance and the others relied on Stone Forest City's advantages, surpassing the various superpowers' exploration progress in the bottomless abyss. However, while all was well after the Storm Serpent King's raid, Starlink had spread a rumor that Shifeng had stolen a fragmented legendary item. This caused a huge commotion in the Sea of Death. Every power in the area had begun to target Zero Wing's members, and as a result, Zero Wing had been unable to continue its naval development or contest for naval resources. Many experts were also searching for Shifeng, especially those from the many dark powers. These dark powers' desire for a fragmented legendary item was particularly frenzied, and they had sent more than a few spies into Zero Wing to track Shifeng down. Although we've secured the necessary materials for producing master potions and fine gold resistance equipment from the bottomless abyss, our naval supply line has practically been cut off. It has significantly slowed our material collection, Blackie said. Lu Xinglua really is ruthless. Shi Feng smiled bitterly. He had not acquired a fragmented legendary item from the Storm Serpent King, yet no one would believe him. The Storm Serpent King was the strongest boss anyone had killed in God's domain thus far. Not even the Frost Monarch was as powerful as the King-class sea monster. Meanwhile, when players advanced into level 100 maps, master potions and high-level resistance equipment would be a necessity. Level 100 was a massive turning point in the game, and maps of that level would change drastically, not to mention the monsters. Without master potions and high-level resistance equipment, players would have no hope of survival in these maps. If players couldn't even survive in these areas, they'd have no chance of surviving in their Tier 3 promotion quest venues, which were far more dangerous. To take advantage of the various powers' ignorance on the matter, Zero Wing had secretly stockpiled the necessary materials to produce these items. However, with Zero Wing's naval supply line severed, its material collection had slowed by half. Why isn't Qingxue here? Shi Feng asked after listening to everyone's reports, glancing at the empty Vice Guild leader's seat beside him with a strange look. Gentle Snow was responsible for Zero Wing's branch guild in the Black Dragon Empire. She had a significant amount of the guild's resources and manpower under her management. Blackie fell silent for a moment. Has something happened? Blackie's response, or lack thereof, gave Shi Feng a bad feeling. Actually, the Feng family, Fenglin City's #1 family, has proposed marriage to Big Sis Qingxue. Chapter 2266, Consequences. Fenglin City's Redstone Restaurant. As the most prestigious restaurant in Fenglin City, the Redstone Restaurant was strictly members only. Regardless of how much money one had, non-members had no hope of dining in the restaurant. However, many of the city's high-profile individuals frequently visited the establishment to discuss business. The Redstone Restaurant was a particularly safe place, and one wouldn't have to worry about other professionals eavesdropping on a sensitive discussion. The establishment's capable waiters and waitresses made this point clear. Secondly, the restaurant's food was amazing. Even people who ate delicacies every day would never forget the taste of the food here. And since the Redstone Restaurant didn't offer takeout, anyone who wished to dine had to visit personally. Because of these two factors, practically every respectable individual in Fenglin City took every opportunity they had to dine in the restaurant seriously. Naturally, the Feng family were frequent customers. Two young men currently occupied one of the restaurant's 7th-floor VIP rooms. While they conversed, the young men took their time to enjoy the delicacies that covered the table between them. One of the men was rough and robust, while the other seemed scholarly. No outsider would assume that these two were brothers by blood. The scholarly young man was the Feng family's current head, Feng Xiaotian. Feng Xiaotian currently wore a set of white robes, and although he looked to be in his mid-20s, he was already in his 30s. He was the Feng family's eldest young master. The muscular man across from him was the family's second eldest son, Feng Mingyu. Little 2, how are the preparations going for the annual martial arts competition between the 5 great families? Feng Xiaotian asked, looking up at Feng Mingyu. Unlike most families, the Feng family was an ancient martial arts family. To them, the annual martial arts competition between the 5 great families was even more prestigious than the national fighting competition. Rest assured, big bro, this year's competition is ours for the taking, Feng Mingyu responded with a laugh. He then pointed at the dozen or so youths standing behind him and explained, I've trained every one of them personally. 2 have even grasped internal force. The dozen or so combatants behind Feng Mingyu looked very young. None of them were older than 20, and the youngest was only 17. However, not even national-level fighters were a match for these youths' fitness. Good. Feng Xiaotian nodded approvingly. God's domain has been growing more popular recently, and many major corporations have already invested in the game. Grandpa wants us to join the game as well, so you'd better be prepared. We're going to play, too. The revelation surprised Feng Mingyu. Emichim. The game touches upon certain important secrets, so the Fong family intends to take part, Fong Xiaotian said. This is also why I suggested that we send a representative to propose a marriage with the Biyao family. Not only is the Bai family's Bai Qingxue beautiful, but she is also quite capable. She successfully defended her elder brother's guild, albeit for a short time. With another decade to develop, the Biyao family might be able to join our circle. It's a pity that the Blackwater Corporation interfered so soon, but I've recently heard that she's prospering in God's domain and had earned quite a bit of profit for the White Clan group. She's just perfect for Little 3. Hopefully, this will help Little 3 finally control himself. Despite several scoldings from Grandpa, he refuses to change and continues to fool around, Fong Mingyu said, chuckling. Although their third brother was useless, he was still a member of the Fong family. Although the Bai family was second-rate in Fenglin City, the Fong family had displayed immense respect by allowing Bai Qingxue to marry into the family. Unfortunately, it seems that little girl has been playing tricks. If you have the time, pay the Bai family a visit and shake them up a bit. If she continues to be a problem, invite the Bai family's old man to speak with us. Tell him that our family's head wishes to meet with him, Fong Xiaotian said. Sure, I'll make sure it gets done, Fong Mingyu replied, nodding. Honestly, Fong Mingyu didn't think it was necessary for him to take action. The Fong family had already offered them a marriage, and if the Bai family didn't know how to appreciate that kindness, the Fong family could simply remove them from Fenglin City. The Bai family should understand this point and know which decision they should make. At this point, Shi Feng arrived outside the Redstone restaurant. According to Liang Jing, Fong Xiaotian, the Fong family's current head and eldest son, was currently dining in the restaurant. Since Fong Xiaotian was responsible for this marriage proposal, Shi Feng had to discuss the matter with him directly. Let's head inside, Shi Feng said as he glanced at Xiao Yu, who had just arrived. Shi Feng wasn't a member and couldn't simply enter the Redstone restaurant. Xiao Yu, however, had gained membership through his connection with Han Yifeng. Even so, Xiao Yu still had to pay 2 million credits per year to maintain his membership. Ordinary citizens could only afford the membership fees in their dreams. Are you really planning to speak with Fong Xiaotian, head instructor Shi? Xiao Yu asked anxiously. The Fong family can't compare to the Starline Corporation, but it has very deep roots in Fenglin City. Its influence across the city is immensely powerful, especially in the city's fighting industry. We've only opened the Heaven's Rumble Training Center recently. If we provoke Fong Xiaotian, I'm afraid the consequences will be. Old Xiao, you're afraid that we'll provoke him, but I'm afraid that he doesn't understand the consequences for provoking us, Lei Bao, who stood beside Shi Feng, said, chuckling. Alright, that's enough. Let's head inside. Lei Bao's comment rendered Xiao Yu speechless. He was sure that the man was messing with him. When Xiao Yu saw Shi Feng's determination, however, he gritted his teeth and followed the two men into the restaurant. Once inside, a waiter quickly led Shi Feng's party to a VIP room on the 7th floor. 4 men in black suits stood by the doors, guarding the room. These people were none other than Fong Xiaotian's bodyguards, and they all radiated imposing auras. Although they merely stood there, it was clear that the 7th floor was under their observation. They would notice and react to any suspicious movement in the hall instantly. Even Lei Bao was a little intimidated by the 4 bodyguards. All 4 bodyguards were internal force experts, and in a small city, they'd easily become the bosses of the local fighting industry. However, these individuals had lowered themselves to guarding the Fong family's members. It was clear how much power the Fong family had. Sir, this is a private room. Outsiders are not allowed inside, one of the bodyguards declared as Shi Feng's group approached. Tell young Master Fong that Heaven's Rumble Shi Feng wishes to chat with him, Shi Feng replied, unperturbed. Please wait a moment, the bodyguard said. He then communicated Shi Feng's request to the bodyguard in the room through his earpiece. The bodyguard in the room relayed the message immediately. Shi Feng? Heaven's Rumble's Hall Master? Fong Xiaotian chuckled. It seems he's here to stand up for Bai Qingxue. He overestimates himself. He's just a new training center's hall master, yet he dares to interrupt us. Fang Mingyu said, frowning. It seems I've been away from Fenglin City for so long that these people have forgotten about me. Forget it. We'll just send them away, Fang Xiaotian decided after giving the matter some thought. The bodyguard beside Fang Xiaotian informed the bodyguards outside the room of his employer's reply and told them to deal with the problem. Suddenly, however, the room's doors burst open, and a young man entered the room, followed by Lei Bao and Xiao Yu. Chapter 2267, Initial Confrontation. As Shi Feng and his two companions entered the graceful, antique-styled room, Fang Xiaotain and Fang Mingyu stared at them in shock. Who allowed them inside? Fang Xiaotian demanded coldly as he glared at the open doors. He was furious. He had clearly instructed his bodyguards to chase Shi Feng's group away, yet they had made it into the room. He hadn't heard a commotion outside the room, so he could only assume his bodyguards had allowed them to pass. However, Fang Xiaotian received no response as the seconds ticked by. The situation confused him. Had they all betrayed him? After considering the idea, he realized that would be impossible. The Fang family had paid a huge sum to train their bodyguards, so the men were absolutely loyal. Even if one of them had become a turncoat, there was no way that all 4 bodyguards had turned against him simultaneously. Save your energy, young Master Fang. Your bodyguards are already asleep, Shi Feng explained when he noticed Fang Xiaotian's confusion. That's impossible. Fang Xiaotian denied Shi Feng's claim instinctively. He was very familiar with the 4 bodyguards' skills. They were only basic internal force experts, but if they worked together, they could even give a national fighting champion a run for his money. How could anyone knock all 4 of them unconscious without making a sound? Lai Bao could only shake his head and sigh from behind Shi Feng. The cooperation between 4 basic internal force experts would certainly be a magnificent scene to behold, but compared to a true neutralizing grandmaster, they were little more than infants. With exceptional reaction speed, perception, and physical prowess, if a neutralizing grandmaster wanted to go somewhere, how could a bunch of bodyguards stop him? Fang Xiaotian ordered one of the bodyguards behind him to check on the 4 outside. When he reached the door, he found the 4 bodyguards unconscious in a corner of the hall. Young Master, Ah Tao, the others, they're really unconscious, the bodyguard stammered. Silence filled the room, and Feng Xiaotian turned to evaluate Shi Feng's group. It's no wonder why you were so confident to meet me here, Feng Xiaotian said. Despite his passed-out bodyguards, he didn't seem flustered. On the contrary, he maintained a calm attitude as he said, however, do you think this display will change my mind? Stop dreaming. I know who you are, Shi Feng. You're Heaven's Rumble's Hall Master. You've already defeated Wang Zongxuan and shook Fenglin City's various dojos and training centers with your name alone. Moreover, you are one of Zero Wing's core upper echelons. Zero Wing has been developing quite nicely in God's domain and has become a pseudo-superpower. It is now an overlord on the eastern continent. Now, the guild has been recruiting a large number of talented fighters through the Heaven's Rumble Training Center and is rapidly growing stronger in the game. However, this is the real world, not some game. In the real world, Zero Wing has no background or supporters. It's nothing. I wouldn't even need to lift a finger to deal with you. A few words would be more than sufficient to end your business in Fenglin City. Xiao Yu felt an immense weight drop on his shoulders as Fang Xiaotian spoke. Zero Wing wasn't afraid of financial suppression. Only small, hostile tricks could affect the guild and workshop. Fang Mingyu stood abruptly, looming like a brown bear in the room. Standing at 2-3 meters tall. His arms were thicker than a woman's thighs, and his tanned complexion made him look like a golden statue. Unbreakable. Someone's actually trained in the Henglian style to the unbreakable realm? Lei Bao stared at Fang Mingyu as he walked toward the group in utter shock. Training with the Henglian style was a painful toil. Not only would a combatant's punch carry 1,000 kilos of force as an advanced master, but they'd also be able to take hits from an internal force expert without injury. Not even apex internal force experts would want to mess with an advanced Henglian-style practitioner. And yet, Fang Mingyu had fully mastered the Henglian style, reaching the unbreakable realm. If he fought someone like Wang Zongquan, he could end the fight in one hit. Wang Zongquan would be utterly helpless against Fang Mingyu. You are quite strong to take out 4 of my elder brother's bodyguards simultaneously. I'll give you a chance. Join the Fang family and sell us all of your Zero Wing shares. You'll receive your share of the pie once the Fang family owns Zero Wing. You will enjoy greater status and authority than you could ever enjoy in Zero Wing, Fang Mingyu offered as he approached Shifeng, his firm tone leaving no room for negotiation. Xiao Yu, who stood behind Shifeng, felt the strength drain from his legs. Fang Mingyu's aura was simply too frightening. Xiao Yu normally trained as well and had cultivated a relatively formidable aura though his years' work, yet he felt tiny before Fang Mingyu. Moreover, Fang Mingyu had something on him that most professional fighters did not: killing intent. As the man walked toward the trio, it felt like a mountain of corpses were lumbering toward him. What if I refuse? Shifeng calmly replied. Then I'll just have to take you back to the family. Once you're there, I'm sure you'll change your mind, Fang Mingyu said, laughing. You say that if I join the Fang family, I'll enjoy greater status and authority than I currently do in Zero Wing? Shifeng asked. That's right. You certainly qualify to receive such power, Fang Mingyu answered, nodding. My position in Zero Wing is quite high. Not only do the guild's vice-guild leaders have to listen to my commands, but every large-scale operation the guild considers must receive my permission first. Moreover, I am responsible for approving any decision regarding the guild's finances and development, Shifeng said after giving the matter some thought. As soon as Shifeng finished speaking, silence returned to the room. Are you toying with me? Fang Mingyu demanded, his expression darkening. If the Fang family annexed Zero Wing, not even Fang Xiaotian would have such immense authority, much less Fang Mingyu. I'm not. It is simply the truth, Shifeng said honestly. It seems you won't be convinced until you face reality. Since that is the case, you'll return with me. Fang Mingyu declared as he extended a hand to grab Shifeng by the shoulder. Although the action seemed innocent, how could the touch of one who had reached the unbreakable realm in the Henglian style be so simple? The grab was actually a technique with 13 transformations. Even if Shifeng were a lively monkey, there was no escaping Fang Mingyu's grip. However, as Fang Mingyu was about to clamp down on Shifeng's shoulder to immobilize the young man, Shifeng shrugged his shoulder slightly, so faint that the movement was barely discernible. As if he had been electrocuted, Fang Mingyu jerked back his hand. To an outsider, it would have looked like the larger man's hand had bounced off an invisible barrier. Losing his posture, Fang Mingyu stumbled back a few steps. Chapter 2268, Threat. What did he do? Although Fang Mingyu had only stumbled back a step, the Fang family members were shocked. This was especially true for Fang Xiaotian. Every member of the Fang family knew how powerful Fang Mingyu was. The family's old man had even called him a talent that only appeared once a century in the Fang family and was the strongest member of the younger generation. Fang Mingyu's strength had been unparalleled among Fenglin City's younger generation even before he had mastered the Henglian style. Later, Fang Mingyu had gone overseas to continue his training and master the Henglian style, gaining monstrous strength. Yet, not only had he failed to affect Shifeng, but he had taken a blow, as well. Why wouldn't his family members be shocked to see it? Even Lei Bao, who stood some distance behind Shifeng, was stunned. He knew that Shifeng had become a neutralizing grandmaster, but that achievement should be recent. Neutralizing grandmasters' superior mental capacity allowed them to improve their strength in all aspects, which was a part of the reason that they were so powerful. It especially affected their physical fitness, but even with the help of various hormones, these improvements weren't immediate. Rather, these alterations would take place over a long time. Fang Mingyu, on the other hand, had already reached the Henglian style's unbreakable realm. Physically, he was a humanoid monster. Even some of the weaker grandmasters wouldn't be a match for his raw power, not to mention Shi Feng, who had so recently become a grandmaster. And yet, contrary to Lei Bao's expectations, Shi Feng had won a direct confrontation. It was simply unbelievable. To counterattack in the brief moment when I relied on my strength, it seems that you're not all talk after all, Fang Mingyu said, frowning. He realized what had happened immediately. But I won't give you another chance. Fang Mingyu's fist shot toward Shi Feng in a straight, simple punch. It was even cleaner and more straightforward than a textbook punch. However, this simplicity was precisely the reason that not even a neutralizing grandmaster would find a gap to take advantage of. Lei Bao couldn't help but flinch. He felt as if the sky were falling as the punch shot toward Shi Feng. There was simply no room to flee. There were no holes to exploit. If he were on the receiving end, he'd have no choice but to take the hit. Worse, this punch hadn't made any sound that Lei Bao could hear. This meant that Fang Mingyu's punch was even faster than the speed of sound. Combined with Fang Mingyu's ferocious strength, the hit could likely kill an adult elephant. However, just as Fang Mingyu's fist was about to collide with Shi Feng's cranium, Shi Feng moved forward to greet the attack. Before meeting with the hit, Shi Feng sidestepped and allowed Fang Mingyu's fist to brush past his head. Shi Feng moved to the larger man's side, while Fang Mingyu's fist met nothing but air. Shi Feng's arms swayed as he placed his palm on Fang Mingyu's chest and shoved. Fang Mingyu lost his balance and fell, pinned to the ground by Shi Feng's hand. Boom! Fang Mingyu lay flat on his back, and the impact of his fall was so powerful that it cracked the marble floor and shook the room. The large man's consciousness wavered, his insides shaken. From an outsider's perspective, it had looked like Shi Feng had just appeared beside Fang Mingyu, grabbed the giant, and slammed him to the ground. Everyone in the room fell deathly silent. Are neutralizing grandmasters really this powerful? Lei Bao was at a loss for words as he stared at Fang Mingyu on the ground. Lei Bao had seen Shi Feng's every action, so he knew the movements had been quite simple, yet these simple actions had become magical when Shi Feng performed them. Not only had Shi Feng effortlessly neutralized Fang Mingyu's punch, but he had also reversed the situation, pinning the bear of a man to the ground. Lei Bao had never thought that such a great expert, who had reached the Henglian style's unbreakable realm, would be so frail before a neutralizing grandmaster. At this point, he couldn't even fathom how powerful neutralizing grandmasters truly were. The rest of the room's occupants stared at Shi Feng as if he were a monster. However, the young man's gaze never left Fang Mingyu, who lay beside his feet. This unbreakable realm is really something. Shi Feng was quietly amazed as he stared at the dizzy Fang Mingyu. He hadn't thought it possible for someone to nurture their strength to such an extent. If he hadn't become a grandmaster, he wouldn't have been a match for this man. Shi Feng's fight with Fang Mingyu had seemed one-sided to everyone else in the room, but Shi Feng didn't think so. If anyone else had faced Fang Mingyu, that punch would have blown them away. The larger man was even more physically fit than Shi Feng. At the very least, Shi Feng would need quite a bit of time to catch up. In a frontal confrontation, Fang Mingyu would thoroughly outmatch Shi Feng. However, neutralizing grandmasters' reaction speed and precise control of their power were what made them so powerful. Shi Feng had moved to dodge the hit the moment Fang Mingyu's fist had moved. Once Shi Feng had pushed the man off balance, he had relied on Fang Mingyu's weight and his own strength to achieve the shocking results. Despite such a heavy blow, Fang Mingyu had suffered barely any damage, as if his body were truly made of steel. He had merely suffered a minor disruption to his blood circulation and had been temporarily incapacitated. After inspecting Fang Mingyu's condition, Shi Feng looked up at the dumbfounded Fang Xiaotian, who sat on the other side of the table. Sensing Shi Feng's gaze, Fang Xiaotian felt a chill crawl down his spine. "What are you trying to do? I'd advise you against messing around. This is the Redstone restaurant." Fang Xiaotian blurted out. The Redstone restaurant had branches all over the world, residing in any second-tier or above city. Although many major powers had desired the restaurant's special food and beverages, no one had successfully stolen the recipes. The restaurant's power was obvious. A little commotion within the Redstone restaurant was acceptable, but it wouldn't tolerate anything more than that. Young Master Fong, you jest. Why would I act recklessly here? Shi Feng asked with a chuckle. Shi Feng knew a little about the Redstone restaurant situation, so he knew the restaurant's rules. Even a neutralizing Grandmaster would suffer if they tried to provoke the Redstone restaurant. The moment Shi Feng had entered the VIP room, he had sensed a powerful aura lock onto him. Although the aura didn't originate from a Grandmaster, the individual's spiritual prowess was quite high. Shi Feng guessed that the individual was only a half step from becoming a Grandmaster. Shi Feng approached the table, and Feng Xiaotian instinctively wanted to retreat. However, the mentality of a superior he had nurtured over many years allowed him to remain firm in his position. What are you trying to do? Gloomy, Feng Xiaotian snarled, even if you're immensely powerful, the Feng family's might in Fenglin City is beyond imagining. You shouldn't get so excited, young Master Feng. I'm here merely to chat with you, Shi Feng said as he sat in Feng Mingyu's original seat. He glanced at Feng Xiaotian and continued, I know you wish to annex Zero Wing starting with Gentle Snow, but I'd advise that you abandon that notion while you still can. Zero Wing will be taking charge of this matter. You might have great authority and strength under your command, but you shouldn't forget that not even an entire country can protect you if your enemy is close. After Shi Feng's statement, a biting cold assaulted everyone in the room. For a moment, these individuals felt as if they stood before the gates of hell. After 2 seconds of this cold, it vanished as if it had never happened. However, Feng Xiaotian's back was drenched in sweat, and by the time he snapped out of his gaze, Shi Feng had stood and left the room. Chapter 2269, Silver Membership. When they realized Shi Feng was leaving, Lei Bao and Xiao Yu followed after him. Are we really going to leave, just like that? Xiao Yu worriedly asked Shi Feng. I doubt those brothers will let this matter rest so easily. They definitely won't let this matter rest, but I merely came to greet them and ensure that they understand how useless little tricks are against us, Shi Feng nonchalantly explained. Moreover, I think that many people will realize that they shouldn't casually provoke Zero Wing after today's display. Even if the Feng family's influence is extensive, they'll have to evaluate the risk properly. Realization dawned on Xiao Yu as he listened to Shi Feng. Although it was true that the Feng family had an iron grip on Fenglin City, the Feng family had to rely on others to complete many tasks. Now that Shi Feng had shown that he could suppress Feng Mingyu, the strongest member of the Feng family's younger generation, the Feng family's prestige would take a blow, while the event would bolster Zero Wing's reputation. This, in turn, would warn many of Fenglin City's various major powers against provoking Zero Wing, and they'd hold back before following Feng family's orders. In fact, they might even refuse to target Zero Wing. One had to consider their own position before acting on someone else's behalf, after all. While the Feng family ruled Fenglin City, everyone would follow the family's wishes, but when another power, one just as strong as the Feng family, rose, the general populace would hesitate before leaning on one side or the other. We need to accelerate our development and bolster Zero Wing's internal member count. The Heavens Rumble Training Center has to open more branches as quickly as possible to increase our recruitment rate, Shi Feng announced. At the same time, we'll buy some of the latest God's Domain combat facilities and open a virtual combat platform in the training center. We'll also need to organize a reward system. God's Domain's influence in the real world had been even greater than that of the fighting industry in Shi Feng's previous life. In fact, not a single industry in the world had been able to compete with the game's influence. Meanwhile, virtual combat platforms played a massive role in God's Domain's power in the real world. God's Domain had replaced fighting competitions in the past, becoming the most popular activity across the globe. At this point, God's Domain's influence had grown intensely in the real world. One would almost always overhear conversations about the game as they walked the city streets. School students even began to introduce themselves with their in-game IDs and levels in God's domain. Since the virtual combat platforms hadn't gained much popularity yet, he had to set one up in Fenglin City as soon as possible. Shifeng hadn't done so yet because Zero Wing had simply lacked the ability to. The timing hadn't been right either. However, as more competitions were held in God's domain, in-game combat would become increasingly popular. It was now time to secure a virtual combat platform. Setting up new branches in Fenglin City and purchasing the facilities you mentioned will cost a significant amount of money. With our current finances, I'm afraid, Xiao Yu agreed with Shifeng's idea, but Heaven's Rumble could barely make ends meet. Moreover, Zero Wing wasn't having a particularly good time in God's domain. Although Xiao Yu was mainly responsible for managing the training center, he frequently discussed finances with Liang Jing, so he knew quite a lot about Zero Wing's situation. Currently, Zero Wing possessed the gold mine known as Stone Forest Town. However, as Zero Wing had been purchasing large quantities of materials and the guild had been rapidly expanding, its expenditures had been rising. The guild had also constructed new towns in many locations. Most importantly, other guild towns had begun to appear in the bottomless abyss. As a result, Stone Forest Town's customer base had significantly decreased, which, in turn, reduced Zero Wing's income. The guild simply didn't have the money to spare. We can set up more branches later, then, but we cannot delay establishing a virtual combat platform, Shifeng said after giving the matter some thought. Naturally, he was familiar with Zero Wing's situation. Zero Wing might not have the money to open new branches for the Heaven's Rumble Training Center, but it had the money to purchase virtual combat facilities. Any corporation that wanted to expand would need a huge amount of capital. Thus, corporation owners would try to attract as much investment as possible, but doing that would reduce the owners' shares and their authority in the company. Without sufficient authority, these owners would be restricted in what they could accomplish. Moreover, a corporation risked betrayal by accepting investors. Investors weren't impervious to threats and bribery. Such situations had been common in God's domain during Shifeng's previous life. Although Zero Wing was developing slowly, every step was firmly rooted. Hence, outsiders had a very difficult time attacking and influencing Zero Wing from within. This was also why the various superpowers had a difficult time annexing Zero Wing. If these superpowers targeted any other guild, they'd quickly devour it. I understand, Xiao Yu said, nodding. I'll contact the vendors later. As Shifeng and his companions reached the restaurant's first floor, they were greeted by a middle-aged man and two youngsters. The middle-aged man looked to be around 50 and wore black martial artist robes. Although he did not look physically strong, one would notice how steady his steps were if they watched him carefully. However, due to his faint aura, an ordinary expert might dismiss the man as a harmless, middle-aged uncle. To Shifeng, however, this man's aura was as deep as the great ocean. He was certain that this was the same aura that had locked onto during his conversation with Feng Xiaotian. The young man and woman behind him looked to be in their early 20s. The woman was curvy and graceful, while the man was as robust as a leopard. He was also handsome enough to earn a modeling job. Both youngsters wore the Redstone restaurant's uniform, and their auras were comparable to a national fighter's. Hello, Mr. Shifeng. I am this restaurant's manager, Huang'an, the middle-aged man said, smiling as he introduced himself. Xiao Yu, who stood beside Shifeng, was shocked. Not even the Feng family could afford to provoke the Redstone restaurant, and the various branches' managers were mysterious, rarely showing themselves in public. Xiao Yu had never expected Fenglin City's branch manager to introduce himself to them. May I know what business you have with me, Manager Huang? Shifeng asked. Mr. Shifeng, you are currently one of the most famous individuals in Fenglin City, and our Redstone restaurant wishes to befriend you. Here is our restaurant's silver membership card. If you choose to dine at our restaurant in the future, you will receive a 10% discount on all purchases, Huang'an explained as he revealed a silver card, presenting it to Shifeng. Silver membership? Xiao Yu's eyes nearly fell out of their sockets when he heard Huang An's words. Despite relying on his connection with Hanifeng, Xiao Yu had only acquired a normal membership card. Moreover, he had to pay an annual membership fee of 2 million credits. Silver members, on the other hand, weren't required to pay a membership fee. Even in Fenglin City, very few people possessed a Redstone Restaurant silver membership card. Thanks. After glancing at the membership card, Shi Feng slid it away and left the restaurant without another word. The only thing he wanted to do right now was to re-enter God's domain. After today's events, he was determined to return from the Tower of Four Gods as soon as possible. As Shi Feng's group left the Redstone restaurant, the young man and woman behind Huang An spoke up. That guy doesn't know how to appreciate a favor. He just left after receiving the card. He didn't even bother with any light conversation, the young woman grumbled. He's likely been frightened off. He just slapped the Feng family in the face, and they won't let him get away with it. He might be considering leaving Fenglin City as soon as he's able, the young man commented, snickering. That's right. The Feng family is guarded by a neutralizing grandmaster like Old Man Feng. Who would dare provoke the Feng family? The old man won't be able to ignore the slight, the young woman said, admiration brightening her features as she spoke of neutralizing grandmasters. It seems you two need more training. You have no business discussing this, Huang An said, shaking his head. Why is that, instructor? The young woman asked. Rather than replying, however, Huang An waited until Shi Feng disappeared before he continued, I suspect that Shi Feng might be a neutralizing grandmaster. Chapter 2270, Second Floor's Effect. With his business in the Redstone restaurant complete, Shi Feng quickly returned to Zero Wing's main headquarters, instructing his people to work on improving their Tier 2 skills and spells completion rates. He also reserved some advanced combat rooms for the guild's core members in Zero Wing's various battle arenas. The advanced combat rooms might not be as effective as the Tower of Four Gods, but they were better than nothing. Meanwhile, Xiao Yu began to organize the purchases to set up the virtual combat platform for the Heaven's Rumble Training Center. Blackie, I'm afraid I'll have to spend quite some time in the Tower of Four Gods. While I'm gone, I want you to focus on collecting ancient origin wood and diamond wood. Also, have Qingxue lead the main force members to the Sea of Death's Tide Vortex to grind monsters. The monsters there should drop something called the Tide Stone Fragment, Shi Feng said. Collect as many fragments as you can. I will need them. Players could only enter the Tower of Four Gods once every 360 days, and he couldn't just leave the tower and waste the opportunity. After completing the trials on the first floor, however, he realized that completing the rest would take a long time. Meanwhile, more powers had begun to shift their focus to the sea. As a result, Dragonheart City had become more important in the game. If Zero Wing wished to continue its rapid development while collecting enough funds to set up more Heaven's Rumble Training Center branches, it would have to establish itself in Dragonheart City as soon as possible. To do that, Zero Wing needed to increase its popularity in the city. That way, Zero Wing could establish a guild residence, allowing easy teleportation to the city for its members. This was also why the various large guilds were pushing their members to complete quests in Dragonheart City. Although many of these guilds had collected the necessary ancient gold to purchase land and build a guild residence, they didn't have enough popularity to establish a teleportation array within the residences. As a result, their established guild residences could only serve as a resting place for guild members, nothing more. Unfortunately, gaining popularity in Dragonheart City wasn't an easy task. As an independent, neutral city, very few quests offered guild popularity, and with so many guilds contesting for these quests, accumulating 50,000 guild popularity was incredibly difficult. However, quests weren't the only method of gaining guild popularity. A guild could also accumulate popularity in Dragonheart City through Tide Stone fragments. The only monsters that dropped these fragments were in the Tidal Vortex, which was located in the Sea of Death's core area. Even the weakest monster in the area was a level 90 Great Lord, and the tidal vortex was home to quite a few level 90+ Grand Lords. One would frequently encounter level 90+ mythic monsters, as well. There was no doubt that the tidal vortex was a very dangerous place. If a team entered the tidal vortex without a Tier 3 expert, even survival would be an immense challenge. Initially, Shifeng had wanted to lead a team to the tidal vortex to grind for EXP and tidal stone fragments himself, but since he was stuck in the Tower of Four Gods and Zero Wings situation was growing tenser, he had to rely on Blackie and the others to complete the task. Zero Wings' main force was no longer weak, its members were level 90 on average. The main force also had an MT like Cola, who wielded a fragmented legendary shield. The main force members should barely be strong enough to grind efficiently in the tidal vortex. "Alright, I'll notify the others right away," Blackie replied. He took the situation seriously when Shifeng had stated that the tidal stone fragments were of great importance. He left Shifeng's room immediately to notify the other main force members. Once Blackie left, Shifeng lay in his virtual gaming cabin and logged back into God's domain to clear the Tower of Four Gods trials as quickly as possible. As God's domain appeared around him, he returned to the temple with the six-headed hell snakes. System: kill 1,000 six-headed hell snakes within 3 days. If you fail to complete this task in the stipulated time, the challenge will automatically be regarded as a failure. Kill 1,000 of these things in 3 days? The second floor's first trial is much harder than the first floor's. Shifeng could not help but frown when he read the system notification. Although the first floor's first trial had required him to slay 1,500 twin-headed netherfire wolves, the wolves had been ordinary lords. These six-headed hell snakes, on the other hand, were bloodline creatures. Not only did the hell snakes have far more HP, but they also had special bloodline abilities. Killing these monsters would be far more difficult than killing the netherfire wolves, and the six-headed hell snakes roamed the temple in groups of 2 or 3. Even a refinement realm expert of the same level would struggle to kill all 1,000 hell snakes in 3 days. Once the brief invulnerability buff he received for logging back in faded, Shifeng wasted no time as he charged toward a group of 2 six-headed hell snakes. Sure enough, the six-headed hell snakes were far more challenging than the twin-headed netherfire wolves. The moment the 2 hell snakes noticed Shifeng, all 12 heads attacked the swordsman with perfect coordination. Such a well-coordinated attack could likely kill an ordinary Tier 2 expert. To Shifeng, however, the hell snake's attacks lacked finesse. He responded by unsheathing Killing Ray, countering the 2 hell snakes' asterisk attacks with his own secret technique, Lightning Flash. When the attacks collided, sparks flashed between them. Both six-headed hell snakes were thrown back as a series of damages exceeding -90,000 appeared above their heads. What high defense, Shifeng thought as he looked at the 2 monsters. Killing Ray had only left a white mark on the hell snake's asterisk scales, failing to cut through. The hell snake's defense could practically rival a Grand Lord's. Could this be their special ability? Killing Ray was a top-tier epic weapon, and when paired with his strength, he could easily slice through the flesh and meat of a Grand Lord of the same level, yet he had failed to injure the Lord-ranked six-headed hell snakes. The only explanation he could think of was their bloodline ability. This was the bloodline ability that players detested more than any other. Players' damage in God's domain depended on their basic attributes, as well as any injuries they inflicted on monsters. Skin, muscle, and bone damage could significantly affect players' overall damage. This was why players constantly sought high-quality weapons later in the game. Even without incredibly high basic attributes, players could rely on sufficiently powerful weapons to deal even more damage than players with high attributes and weaker weapons. Fortunately, Shifeng found Lightning Slash easier to execute here than on the first floor. Moreover, he had consumed 20% less concentration. Before Shifeng could test the second floor's effects, the 2 six-headed hell snakes had launched another round of attacks. Suddenly, inspiration struck as Shifeng instinctively executed Lightning Flash. This time, instead of 14 slashes, Shifeng struck the 2 hell snakes with 15 slashes. Lightning Flash's power instantly increased. Not only did Shifeng's counterattack repel all 12 heads, but it also left a bone-deep gash in each head, the injuries slightly affecting the Hellsnake's combat power. At the same time, damages of over -100,000 appeared above each head. The technique already possesses such great destructive power with just 15 slashes? Shifeng was stunned, staring at the injured Hellsnakes. However, Shifeng instantly felt the aftereffects. Not only had his entire body gone numb, but he had also lost nearly half of his maximum concentration. Fortunately, the numbness lasted less than a second, and Shifeng was able to defend himself against the Hellsnake's next attacks. The 15-lightning flash's side effects were far more severe than Shifeng had expected, but that didn't stop Shifeng from using the technique. Once he had recovered enough concentration, he used the technique again to familiarize himself with the improved version. After roughly 8 minutes, Shifeng slew the 2 6-headed Hellsnakes. The instant the 2 Hellsnakes died, Shifeng felt a trace of their bloodlines flow into his body, granting him 1 point of bloodline power. At the same time, the 2 Hellsnakes dropped a shining, crimson stone that radiated a strange, alluring energy. Chapter 2271, Tower of 4 GodsJecrets. As more time passed, the strange energy the crimson stone radiated became so dense that even Shifeng could feel it affect him from 5 yards away. He felt his bloodlust rise and rage fill his mind. What is this thing? Despite being inactive, it has such a powerful, mental influence on those around it. Shifeng stared at the crimson stone in shock. Eternal energy filled the Tower of 4 Gods, allowing players to maintain ideal mental clarity and focus. However, the strange energy this crimson stone radiated had the complete opposite effect. Shifeng picked up the stone to inspect it. The instant his fingers touched the crimson stone, however, his very soul shuddered. He felt, for a moment, as if he stood in a sea of blood and gore. Powerful, violent energy assaulted his body, weakening the eternal energy's effects. Contaminated soul fragment? Shifeng was dumbfounded after inspecting the stone. How is this possible? The crimson stone was a fragment of condensed souls. A soul was intangible in the real world and in God's domain. Trying to make a soul tangible was an excruciatingly difficult process. Normally, a soul could only take on a physical form with the help of divine items. Take the soul orb, a fragment of the treasure of illusion, for example. It could be used to absorb a portion of a player's soul and use the collected souls to create soul water. The ancient gods' literature fragment could also absorb the souls of half-dead creatures to create soul essence. However, soul water and soul essence were significantly smaller items than this fist-sized crimson stone. Contaminated soul fragment, special item. This fragment is comprised of countless condensed and violent souls. It contains dense soul power and can be merged with any creature's soul to achieve ascension. However, doing so will subject the target to intensely oppressive effects. This fragment can only exist within the Tower of 4 Gods. It will disappear upon leaving the tower. It's no wonder why the Or Empire's founding emperor was so bloodthirsty. So, that was due to this thing. Realization dawned on Shifeng after reading the contaminated soul fragment's description. So, the opportunity everyone referred to was this stone. The Tower of 4 Gods had been responsible for the rise of countless powerhouses in God's domain, including the founders of empires. These individuals' powerful souls were a large part of the reason they had gained the strength to lord over a country. After all, souls were the root of everything, including players. If players' souls were extinguished, they'd have to start a new account if they wished to continue in God's domain. If players could strengthen their souls, they'd have an easier time mastering skills, spells, and combat techniques. Their physiques would improve, as well. When one gained a new tier in God's domain, their soul ascended. If a person's soul ascended by other means, they'd improve in all aspects. And now, Shifeng learned that soul fragments, which could help one's soul forcibly ascend, dropped in the Tower of 4 Gods. One could easily imagine how great of an opportunity this was. It was no wonder why even Tier 6 God-ranked players had fought to enter the tower. Absorbing such violent souls will likely be a major challenge for players. Absorbing too many of these contaminated soul fragments is likely impossible. Shifeng gave the crimson stone in his hand a disappointed look. He only held the contaminated soul fragment, yet it had such a powerful effect on his mental state. Moreover, it was surrounded by eternal energy. Its effects would likely be many times stronger in the outside world. Shifeng couldn't even imagine what would happen if he absorbed this thing. He estimated that absorbing 2 contaminated soul fragments would be his limit. Any more, and it would affect his mental state. Of course, his limit was only this low because he was a Tier 2 player. He'd likely be able to absorb more contaminated soul fragments as he rose in tier. It was like adding salt to water. Once the water was saturated, no more salt would dissolve. In this case, the violent energy within the contaminated soul fragment was the salt, while his soul was the water. If his soul couldn't absorb the violent energy, the excess would affect his mind. Suddenly, Shifeng had an idea. It was too risky to absorb the violent energy, but the crimson stone itself was condensed soul's essence. He might be able to absorb only the soul power within the fragment by relying on the ancient gods' literature fragment. The ancient gods' literature fragment's soul absorption skill absorbed soul power. The half-dead creatures only referred to monsters when their HPs hit 0. As the corpses disappeared, their physical bodies no longer protected their souls, and the souls could wander. In this state, the ancient gods' literature fragment could then absorb the souls. The soul fragment was the condensed form of these wandering souls. Shifeng then pulled the ancient gods' literature fragment from his bag to experiment. If his experiment failed, so be it. If it succeeded, however, he would hit the jackpot. The ancient gods' literature fragment could, after all, strengthen a creature's soul without any side effects. He grew nervous as he used soul absorption on the contaminated soul fragment. The ancient gods' literature fragment began to glow, and the violent energy within the contaminated soul fragment flared as if it were trying to resist the literature fragment's power. However, the literature fragment had been carefully crafted by an ancient god. How could violent souls possibly resist? The fist-sized crimson stone turned to dust in Shifeng's hand in less than 5 seconds, and Shifeng had acquired a single drop of soul essence. Wonderful! Shifeng rejoiced over the result. Condensing a soul essence was extremely difficult. First, he had to choose a monster that met the minimum level requirement. Soul absorption would not work on monsters that were a lower level than he was. Second, the target had to be sufficiently powerful. Great Lords were likely the lowest limit. Considering that he hadn't reached level 90 when he had hunted the level 102 Great Lord ranked skeleton generals, he guessed that not even souls from level 100 Great Lords would yield him any soul essence once he reached level 100. At the very minimum, he had to target level 100 Grand Lords. Moreover, soul absorption had a 6-hour cooldown. It wouldn't do him any good to grind one boss after another, and he didn't have the free time to hunt a powerful boss every 6 hours. However, he was currently stuck in the Tower of 4 Gods and had nothing better to do. So, he might as well use this opportunity to collect soul essence. Moreover, he couldn't take the contaminated soul fragments outside the Tower of 4 Gods. It was wonderful news that he could use the ancient gods' literature fragment to convert the contaminated soul fragments into a form that he could take with him when he left. Following which, Shifeng continued through the tower's trials, collecting bloodline power and stockpiling soul essence. Due to the generous EXP these monsters provided, he leveled even faster than he would grinding elsewhere. Fortunately, these trials, which would be challenging to normal tier 2 players, were no problem for Shifeng. His life within the Tower of 4 Gods was actually quite relaxing. Once he cleared a floor, he rested for a day and returned to the real world to check up on Zero Wing's situation. However, once he reached the 3rd floor, he found the trial to be a bit challenging. Not only were the 3rd floor's monsters bloodline creatures, but they were also of a higher rank than those on the 2nd floor. The first trial alone tasked Shifeng with killing 900 high lords of the same level. Even peak experts would need a long time to complete the task. Killing all 900 would be utterly impossible in 3 days. Shifeng had only completed the task thanks to his superior basic attributes and the secret technique, Lightning Flash. During the third floor's second trial, Shifeng had to face great lords, and he had to kill 300 of them in 3 days. Even Shifeng had barely managed to complete the trial. After killing the 300 great lords, Shifeng had risen to level 99, only one level away from the level 100 threshold. It was at this point that he had finally collected the 100 bloodline power he needed and accumulated 86 drops of soul essence. If not for the contaminated soul fragment's low drop rate, he would have had more. When Shifeng completed the third floor's second trial, the scene around him changed, and he found himself in the same coliseum he had visited during the first floor's third trial. However, instead of 10 giant gladiators, an ordinary human stood on the elevated platform. This human wore dazzling armor and carried a pitch-black greatsword. When Shifeng saw this swordsman, he could not help but gasp. A Tier 3 hero. Chapter 2272, Bloodline Evolves. The third floor's trial. Is this challenging? Shifeng was rendered speechless as he stared at the human swordsman standing in the center of the elevated platform. Crow Bison, Black Sword Knight, Hero, Tier 3 Sword King. Level 99. HP 13,000,000/13,000,000. Practically every player in God's domain knew that NPCs were not to be provoked by this stage of the game, yet many were still unaware that there were even massive differences between NPCs. Take the NPC giants Shifeng fought on the first floor, for example. They possessed powerful racial traits that granted them superior combat power. The combat power giants wielded ranked at the top among NPCs of the same tier, but comparing an ordinary NPC giant to a hero was like comparing a candle flame to the sun. However, comparing an ordinary NPC giant to a hero was like comparing a candle flame to the sun. Heroes had completed the trial of God and received a god's blessing. Their combat power was unparalleled among those of the same rank. Powerful heroes could even slay an adult dragon by themselves. They were akin to kingdoms and empires' guardian saints. Many Tier 5 Apex experts in Shifeng's previous life had grown conceited and would frequently attack kingdoms and empires' caravans. In the end, many of them had encountered hidden NPC heroes and received a painful beating. These experts hadn't been able to escape and had been locked up in prison for their crimes. Why wouldn't Shifeng be stunned to learn that he had to face a Tier 3 hero? System: kill Crow Bison, the Black Sword Knight, within 1 day. If you fail to complete this task in the stipulated time, the challenge will automatically be regarded as a failure. Shifeng's last spark of hope faded the instant he heard the system notification. He had hoped that he'd only have to survive against the Tier 3 hero for a certain time to clear the third floor's trial. If that were the case, he'd have a chance, but he actually had to kill a Tier 3 hero. Shifeng wouldn't be able to defeat a Tier 3 hero even if he were a Tier 3 player, let alone right now, as a Tier 2 player. The Tier 5 Apex experts of the past had commanded incredibly powerful combat techniques, and the weakest piece of equipment they had worn had been epic rank. They had also carried a few fragmented legendary items, yet they had only earned a one-sided beating during their encounters with Tier 5 heroes. Wait, why is that hero only wearing dark gold equipment? Just as Shifeng was about to give up on the trial and stop wasting his time in the Tower of Four Gods, he noticed that the glow effect on Crow Bison's weapons and equipment was effect unique to dark gold ranked items. Normally, NPC heroes wore a minimum of epic set equipment, while some of the stronger individuals were fully geared in fragmented legendary equipment. An NPC would have an easier time collecting such equipment than players, after all. However, the Tier 3 hero before him only wore dark gold equipment. Moreover, by the looks of the hero's equipment, it wasn't even a dark gold set equipment. I have a chance. Shifeng's eyes glowed with excitement at this discovery. There was a 3-rank difference between epic set equipment and individual dark gold equipment. In other words, this hero's combat power would be 3 ranks lower than usual. Most importantly, Crow Bison was not level 100, but level 99. Level 100 was a massive turning point in God's domain for monsters and NPCs. Until monsters and NPCs reached that threshold, they'd be restricted by the system, only able to exhibit a portion of their full strength. Hence, Shifeng still had a chance of completing the trial. Considering the situation, Shifeng quickly calmed himself and stepped onto the platform. I advise you to turn back, young adventurer. You are not strong enough to defeat me, Crow Bison said. How will I know that without trying? Shifeng countered. Then, I have no choice but to remove you myself. Crow Bison declared, unsheathing the pitch-black greatsword from his back. The intensity of his aura skyrocketed as he charged at Shifeng. Crow Bison was extremely fast, and mid-charge, he split into 6 clones, which were impossible to differentiate between. Sure enough, he'll execute all of his skills and spells with a 100% completion rate. My combat power is still weaker than his, but I might have a chance of victory if I can gain a basic attribute advantage. After the first fight, Shifeng realized that the difference between their strength wasn't as large as he had assumed. His gaze shifted toward the Frost Iron Bloodline's attribute panel. The Frost Iron Bloodline has already increased my strength so drastically. If I can upgrade it to an advanced bloodline, my attributes should climb even higher. With little choice, Shifeng tapped on the Frost Iron Bloodline's attribute panel and chose to evolve it. Chapter 2273, Advanced Fused Bloodline. As soon as Shifeng chose to evolve the Frost Iron Bloodline, the 100 bloodline power he had accumulated transformed into a purple and gold gas that flowed throughout Shifeng's body. As the gas spread throughout his body, Shifeng felt as if he were being burned alive. His heart, however, remained icy cold. At the same time, divine runes began to appear on his body. Initially, the divine runes seemed fragmented, but as the purple gold gas fused with Shifeng, the divine runes completed. After 10 seconds or so, the gas had fused with Shifeng, and a set of complete divine runes had tattooed his body. His aura had changed slightly, as well. If Shifeng had felt like a mighty wolf before, he was now as imposing as a majestic lion. His strength had undergone a qualitative transformation. There's such a huge difference between the Frost Iron Bloodline's basic and advanced versions? Shifeng was a little surprised when he sensed the changes to his body. Frost Iron Bloodline, Fused Bloodline. Increases players' compatibility with melee skills and reaction speed. Mainly improves strength and agility, followed by endurance, vitality, and intelligence. Statistically, the Frost Iron Bloodline had barely changed, yet Shifeng could feel the difference in him quite clearly. Currently, he had massively improved in various aspects. His strength attribute was now only slightly lower than that of a Grand Lord of the same level, and his reaction speed had risen to rival what he had enjoyed in his previous life as a Tier 3 Sword King. Shifeng immediately unsheathed Killing Ray and executed Shadow Blade. The moment he did, however, he was stunned. Before his transformation, he had been able to produce 12 sword lights with Shadow Blade, yet now, he commanded 14 sword lights. His skill completion rate had climbed to 105%, 2% more than his previous limit, as well. The improvement was frightening. It was incredibly difficult to increase a skill completion rate by a single percent after reaching 100%. It was even more of a challenge than raising one's completion rate from 99% to 100%. After nearly 2 weeks in the Tower of Four Gods, he had only increased his Shadow Blade completion rate to 103%, and he still couldn't hit that rate reliably. And yet, Shifeng had just achieved a 105% completion rate with Shadow Blade. Why wouldn't he be surprised? Moreover, every sword light was as powerful as a Grand Lord's attack. If he combined all 14, he could even severely injure a Grand Lord of the same level. Level 90 plus Grand Lords possessed very high defense, and their physical bodies were incredibly tough. Even a berserker would have a hard time injuring a level 90 plus Grand Lord. At best, the berserker's attack would leave a small scratch, not weakening the Grand Lord's combat power in the least. After examining the effects of evolving the Frost Iron bloodline, Shifeng walked toward Crow Bison. He hadn't been a match for the NPC hero since his basic attributes had been slightly weaker than his opponents. Crow Bison was a bona fide Tier 3 existence, and every one of his skills was at Tier 3. Shifeng's reaction speed had also been slightly lower than Crow Bison's. However, the evolved Frost Iron bloodline gave Shifeng a strength advantage, and he could now execute his skills with a 105% completion rate. In terms of raw power, Shifeng's Tier 2 skills were in no way inferior to Crow Bison's Tier 3 skills. Shifeng had also become Crow Bison's equal in terms of reaction speed. His chances of defeating the Tier 3 hero had definitely improved. You still refuse to give up, young adventurer? Crow Bison frowned as Shifeng returned to the platform. You are only Tier 2. The Tower of Four Gods' third-floor trial has been prepared for Tier 3 beings. Of course, I refuse to give up. This is the third floor's final trial. Once I clear it, I'll have cleared the entire floor and receive the reward for doing so. Why would I give up? Shifeng replied. In the Tower of Four Gods, rewards were based on the number of floors the challenger had cleared, and the difference between clearing 2 floors and 3 was massive. To put it into perspective, it was akin to the difference between dark gold equipment and epic equipment. Fine, then I have no choice but to send you back. Crow Bison said. Crow Bison's figure blurred immediately, and in the blink of an eye, he loomed above Shifeng, swinging his pitch black greatsword in a downward arch. As the greatsword descended, Crow Bison split into 3 identical copies. As a result, 3 attacks soared toward Shifeng, converging toward a single point. The power of this attack tore apart space itself. It wasn't any weaker than a mythic monster's attack. Was he holding back? Shifeng wondered, his expression darkening as he watched the incoming blade. Crow Bison had perfectly incorporated a combat technique and skill in this attack. First, the hero had used the Tier 3 skill, Mountain Splitter. He then used an advanced combat technique to combine the 3 attacks, stacking each attack's strength. Not even Domain Realm experts could use this move. Mountain Splitter was an AoE skill. Thus, life-saving skills, such as Defensive Blade, couldn't block it. Only invulnerability skills could stop it. Unwilling to expose weakness, Shifeng executed Purgatory Pentaslash to counter the attack. Each of Purgatory Pentaslash's strikes was stronger than the last, and Shifeng executed the skill with a 104% completion rate, combining it with the strength combination technique. All 5 strikes merged perfectly as they cut through the convergence point of Crow Bison's 3 attacks. Boom! As the blades clashed, a massive explosion shook the arena. The resulting shockwave threw Crow Bison, who had been suspended in the air. Although Shifeng hadn't taken damage, he had depleted a huge chunk of his concentration due to the difficulty of combining the skill and the combat technique, leaving him sluggish. If he hadn't evolved the Frost Iron bloodline to advance rank, pulling off that move would have been impossible. Fortunately, Shifeng was currently in the Tower of Four Gods, which was full of eternal energy. As a result, he had recovered a significant portion of the lost concentration before Crow Bison had even hit the ground. Just before the NPC hero landed, Shifeng executed Wind Blade and charged forth. It wasn't easy to move while suspended in the air, leaving one vulnerable to attack. Naturally, Shifeng wouldn't miss this opportunity. Achieving a 105% completion rate with Wind Blade, Shifeng only needed an instant to cross the 20 or so yards between them. As soon as Shifeng reached Crow Bison, he brandished Killing Ray and executed Lightning Flash. Since Lightning Flash was a combat technique, he didn't need any preparation time to use the attack. As Shifeng swung Killing Ray, his attack felt smoother than ever before. Previously, Shifeng hadn't been able to perform Lightning Flash's 16th slash, yet now, 16 sword lights flew toward Crow Bison like an all-encompassing net, each carrying enough raw power to force a Grand Lord to stumble backward. Crow Bison had reacted very quickly and performed a defensive combat technique. Unfortunately for the NPC, Lightning Flash was a full offensive technique. Even with only 15 slashes, the technique had enough power to rival ordinary bronze combat techniques. Now that Shifeng had performed the 16th slash, the hero could only nullify 5 of the sword lights when focusing on defense, and the remaining 11 attacks struck him squarely. Crow Bison immediately lost over 1 million HP. However, Crow Bison was not an easy opponent. The hero launched a counterattack the moment he landed, his black greatsword releasing an endless darkness that devoured all light around him. The NPC hero sent 9 slashes at Shifeng, and like the darkness around him, the attacks surrounded Shifeng. Even with his sharp senses, Shifeng couldn't sense the attack's trajectories and had to rely on sword's orbit to protect himself. Even with the technique, however, 2 of the attacks struck, dealing more than -100,000 damage. 2 with a maximum HP at 630,000, Shifeng could only afford to take 6 more of those hits. What an amazing move! Shocked, Shifeng stared at Crow Bison. As a domain realm expert, he no longer had to rely on his sight to sense incoming attacks. However, Crow Bison's previous move robbed him of more than his vision. His other senses had significantly weakened, as well. If he hadn't had the reaction speed of a Tier 3 player, he would have lost half of his HP from that attack. It seems this will be a battle of attrition. Shifeng adjusted his approach and activated Twilight of the Gods and Twilight's Shadow. Since these abilities would lower his basic attributes, Shifeng hadn't bothered to use them during the first fight with Crow Bison. Widening the gap between their basic attributes wouldn't help him defeat the Tier 3 hero. However, now that he had an edge with his strength, his doppelganger's one strength wouldn't be as high as Crow Bison, but the difference wouldn't be so vast. They could, more or less, contend with the hero. With the help of his doppelgangers, Shifeng focused on offense and traded blow for blow with Crow Bison. Crow Bison was just too powerful, however, and by the time he had finished off one doppelganger, Shifeng had only dealt a little over -800,000 damage in total. After another 2 minutes, the NPC hero still had 1/3 of his HP remaining. In contrast, Shifeng's HP was nearly at 0. At his current state, he'd only last 3 more moves against Crow Bison. It seems this is my limit. Looking at Crow Bison, Shifeng smiled and said, "Let's start the second round, then." He then activated the Aura of Water's life domain, and he began to recover 20% of his HP each second. Unless Crow Bison could kill him in one hit, the hero couldn't defeat him while life domain was in effect. This was the final trump card Shifeng had saved throughout the fight. It would only last 30 seconds, after all. Shifeng charged at Crow Bison, repeatedly executing Lightning Flash and not giving the hero an opportunity to activate a skill. He rapidly shaved away the NPC's HP. But Crow Bison wasn't a fool either. He focused on his defense, slowing his HP loss. As life domain's 30-second duration was almost over, Crow Bison still had 7% of his HP remaining. Shifeng, however, adjusted his footwork as he activated Instant Strike, the Tier 2 taboo skill he had reserved. He gambled the last of his concentration to execute Lightning Flash. The massive attack speed boost Instant Strike provided allowed Shifeng to execute the combat technique perfectly. 17 sword lights flew toward Crow Bison with such speed that the Tier 3 hero had no time to defend himself while executing a bronze defensive combat technique. As a result, the combined power of the 17 sword lights slammed into Crow Bison, devouring the last of his HP. System, congratulations. You have defeated the hero, Crow Bison, and cleared the Tower of 4 Gods' 3rd floor trial. Chapter 2274, Level 100 Restriction Removed. The instant Crow Bison died, Shifeng's experience bar skyrocketed. He had already been very close to level 100, and in the end, his experience bar took less than 2 seconds to fill completely. Level 100. Suddenly, a faint purple glow enveloped Shifeng's body. The phenomenon wasn't like his previous level-ups, and as soon as the glow faded, invisible chains appeared around him. These chains then cracked and shattered, freeing Shifeng of his prior restrictions. I've already reached level 100? Shifeng sighed ruefully as he looked at his level. He both desired and detested level 100. Level 100 might not seem like much, but Shifeng understood that it was the greatest milestone in God's domain. The main God system didn't only release monsters and NPCs from their restrictions. Players would also undergo a qualitative transformation upon reaching level 100. Unfortunately, they'd also lose the main God system's protection. The invisible chains that bound players were a form of restriction and protection. Not only would players' basic attributes rise by a large margin, but their sensitivity and reactions would also reach 100%. Of course, this meant they would also fully experience the pain when receiving damage, and their mental exhaustion would begin to affect their physical bodies. What everyone knew of God's domain before level 100 was an illusion. It was a watered-down simulation that allowed players to adapt to the actual game. As players continued to level up, they'd experience fewer restrictions, and once they hit level 100, the restrictions would be completely removed, and God's domain's virtual world would truly begin to mimic reality. I've leveled far faster than I had expected. I'll have to complete my Tier 3 promotion as soon as possible, Shifeng thought after getting a feel for his level 100 body. Although combat would be more of a struggle after level 100, the hazy sensation he had felt all this time had finally disappeared. He had regained the body he had been so familiar with during his previous life. While his virtual body had been under the main God system's protection, he hadn't been able to exhibit 100% of his strength. Hence, he hadn't been able to immerse himself in battle fully. That also meant that he hadn't lost much concentration when taking damage. That body hadn't felt like it had truly belonged to him, but now, his concentration would decrease when he took damage. He could finally enjoy a true sense of realism. Although players gained massive improvements when they reached level 100, they would also be at their weakest in God's domain. Monsters and NPCs would be liberated when they reached level 100 as well. An ordinary level 100, Tier 2 expert wouldn't even be a match for a chieftain-ranked monster. In fact, the player would die the moment they entered a level 100 map. Even with a 6-man party, Tier 2 players had to be extremely careful in level 100 plus maps. If players wanted to survive in level 100 plus maps, they had to cross the Tier 3 threshold. Before Shifeng could grow accustomed to his new body, the scene around him blurred. This time, he was teleported to the top of a mountain. Ancient stone pillars decorated the area, and a large number of dragonkin roamed the mountain. Dragonkin looked a lot like humans, but they were covered in scales, and draconic heads, and rough, robust tails. These dragonkin were fully armed with weapons and armor, and they looked like an organized army, guarding these ruins. Black-scaled dragonkin, bloodline creature, Great Lord, level 100. HP 120,000/120,000,000. Although the black-scaled dragonkin were only Great Lords, they felt even more dangerous than the hero, Crow Bison, had, and the ruin Shifeng had teleported to was full of them. If he attacked a single dragonkin, at least 3 of its companions would come to its aid. System, congratulations. You have cleared the 3rd floor's trials and arrived at the Tower of 4 Gods' 4th floor. You may choose to rest here for 1 day. You may also choose to start the 4th floor's trials immediately. The 4th floor really isn't a place for Tier 2 players. I'll need to reach Tier 3 to clear these trials. Shifeng watched the roaming dragonkin with a bitter smile. Dragonkin's life rating was considerably high, even surpassing inferior dragons and giants. Dragonkin had inherited a part of the dragon bloodline. Even ordinary Tier 3 players would have to flee from a level 100+, Great Lord ranked dragonkin. Although Shifeng could rival actual Tier 3 players, he wasn't an actual Tier 3 player. Furthermore, these black-scaled dragonkin had awakened their bloodline abilities. Initially, Shi Feng had wanted to try his luck with the fourth floor's trials, but he dismissed the thought. He decided to give up on the challenge, throwing away his 2 remaining lives and leaving the Tower of 4 Gods. As he couldn't gain anything more from the tower, so there wasn't any reason to stay. Once Shi Feng gave up on the challenge, the system teleported him to a temple. Various treasures were on display within the temple, all intensely dazzling. Every one of the treasures radiated an incredible pressure, and some had an aura that was even stronger than that of a mythic monster. Young adventurer, your success in clearing the 3rd floor is quite the achievement. Even the strongest of your 4 companions barely managed to clear the 2nd floor. The man that had first greeted Shi Feng by the tower's golden doors congratulated. Smiling, the man continued, as your reward for clearing the 3rd floor, I will present 3 items to choose from. You may only take 1 item with you. After the man's statement, 3 brilliant treasures appeared before Shi Feng. As soon as they did, eternal energy began to gather around them. As expected of the Tower of 4 Gods. The rewards are amazing. Shi Feng stared at the 3 items in shock. The first item was the Draconic Eagle's summoning flute. The Draconic Eagle was an advanced extraordinary flying mount with the dragon bloodline. Although it was only 1 rank higher than the Thunder Eagle, the difference between them was massive. The only flying mount stronger than this Draconic Eagle was legendary rank, and very few legendary flying mounts existed in God's domain. As for the 2 other items, they were Dragonblood Sacred Stone, consumable. Has a 20% chance to upgrade a piece of epic equipment to fragmented legendary rank. There is a 50% chance that the Dragonblood Sacred Stone will mutate and strengthen the target equipment. Hero's Tome, special item. Sacrifice 50,000 magic crystals to summon a Tier 4 hero that is 20 levels higher than the user for 12 hours. Can only be used 3 times. Cooldown, 10 days. Although none of the items were fragmented legendary rank, they were no less valuable, and every one of them greatly tempted Shi Feng. Upgrading an advanced extraordinary flying mount to Tier 4 would be a very simple task. On the other hand, he would have to invest a ton of resources in the Thunder Eagle to get it to Tier 4. The Dragonblood Sacred Stone's value went without saying. Even if it failed to upgrade the target epic equipment piece to the fragmented legendary rank, there was still a 50% chance for the piece would mutate. The Hero's Tome was also a priceless item. A bona fide Tier 4 hero would be many times stronger than ordinary mythic monsters. You have 10 minutes to decide. Then, you will be teleported to where you came from. Choose wisely, the majestic man said. I choose the Hero's Tome, Shi Feng announced after giving the matter some thought. Although an advanced extraordinary flying mount was immensely powerful, he would need to invest a lot of time to nurture it. Furthermore, that item wasn't entirely out of his reach. As he grew stronger, he was bound to encounter an opportunity to obtain one. As for the Dragonblood Sacred Stone, it only had a chance of granting him a piece of fragmented legendary equipment. It wasn't a guarantee. The Hero's Tome would be more helpful to him than the Draconic Eagle or Dragonblood Sacred Stone. He wouldn't be able to use external items during his Tier 3 promotion quest, but he could use a Tier 4 hero. In response, the majestic man waved a hand, and an ancient, dilapidated tome appeared in Shi Feng's grip. The sight of the book elated Shi Feng. With this Hero's Tome, he was far more confident of completing the high-difficulty Tier 3 promotion quest. With Tier 3 being a major turning point in God's domain, his performance in the promotion quest would greatly affect his chances of reaching Tier 4 and 5 in the future. He could not afford to be careless. Since you've received your reward, you may leave now. The majestic man waved a hand again, and Shi Feng transformed into a streak of light as he was evicted from the temple. Chapter 2275, Black Flame Reappears. After leaving the Tower of 4 Gods, Shi Feng found himself on an island enveloped in death energy. Not only was the atmosphere chilling, but it also reduced Shifeng's reaction speed, and level 90+ Lord-ranked undead roamed all around him. The Buried Bones Ruin? Looking around, Shifeng quickly recognized where he was. The system really knows how to teleport people. To think it would send me to such a dangerous location. The Buried Bones Ruin was located in the Sea of Death's core area. Although the island wasn't as dangerous as the tidal vortex, it was still a risky place for current players. Ordinary level 90 experts would almost certainly die if they visited this place alone. Not only was flight unallowed in the Buried Bones Ruin, but all means of teleportation were also prohibited. Players had to rely on their own 2 feet to venture in and out of the ruin. Because of this, players had a difficult time escaping dangerous situations in the area. Only 20-man teams or greater would have any chance of exploring the ruin safely. However, Shifeng was powerful enough to come and go as he pleased. Once he had his bearings, Shifeng made his way to the Buried Bones Ruin's entrance. Although the Buried Bones Ruin was a small, isolated island, it was unique. Docking on the island's shore was akin to entering a miniature world. The island wasn't any smaller than large-scale grinding maps on the main continent. After over 20 minutes of running, Shifeng finally found the exit of the canyon that housed the Buried Bones Ruin. As he arrived, he encountered over 1,000 players crowding the exit. These players were split into 2 different teams. One only had 100 players, while the team that blocked the exit consisted of more than 1,000. These were high-leveled players, with the lowest among them at level 86, and quite a few at level 87. The weakest equipment they wore was level 85 Secret Silver rank. At this stage of the game, a guild would have to be first-rate at the very least to arm their experts with such high-quality equipment. Shifeng, however, was more surprised by their identities than their levels and items. The members of the 100-man team sported the Dragon Phoenix Pavilion's guild emblem, and the team's leader was none other than Phoenix Rain's trusted aide, Blue Phoenix. In contrast, every member of the 1,000-man team blocking the canyon's exit was an independent player, and they all wore the same adventurer team logo, sewn into their capes. Interesting. An adventurer team dares to challenge the Dragon Phoenix Pavilion? The matter piqued Shifeng's curiosity. The Dragon Phoenix Pavilion was a super first-rate guild. With the exception of other superpowers, no one would dare provoke it. And yet, an adventurer team had ambushed the Dragon Phoenix Pavilion's members. Nobody would believe this. While Shifeng watched in surprise, a man broke away from the adventurer team. The atmosphere in the area intensified as he appeared. This man was a level 87 half-elf elementalist, and the weakest of his equipment was level 85 fine gold rank. He also carried 4 items that radiated with the epic glow effect, including the icy blue staff in the man's hand. Overall, the man's equipment standard was just as impressive as Blue Phoenix's. Blue Phoenix, who had seemed quite calm, tensed the moment this man appeared. To think that you would come to deal with us as well, Vice Commander Autumn Plant. It seems Warblood thinks quite highly of us, Blue Phoenix sarcastically spat. Warblood was the publicly acknowledged, third-ranked adventurer team on Dragonheart Island. Although the adventurer team didn't have as many members as a first-rate guild, its overall strength and experts could rival that of an ordinary superpower. Everyone on Dragonheart Island knew Warblood's 4 great vice commanders, all of which possessed monstrous strength. Autumn Plant had earned the nickname Bloody Mage after destroying an entire fleet at sea by himself. Now, he had been recognized as one of the top 10 elementalists on Dragonheart Island. You can only blame yourself for your unwise decisions. Do you think you'll be safe here? Plant Autumn asked nonchalantly. Starlink and 13 Thrones have already captured a fortress in the Gravity Mountain Range, acquiring access to unimaginable resources. Despite the invitation guild leader Lu sent the Phoenix Pavilion to cooperate against Zero Wing, you people rejected the offer. Since you have made your decision, like Zero Wing, you will have no hope of surviving in the Sea of Death. First, we'll see if you have the power to keep us here, Blue Phoenix snarled as she revealed a purple-red crystal, chanting an incantation. The crystal shattered and transformed into a crimson magic array before Blue Phoenix. A level 92 Great Lord ranked magma giant then emerged from the magic array. Moreover, the magma giant was an archaic species. The instant this magma giant arrived, the temperature in the area soared. This magma giant was Blue Phoenix's trump card. A level 92 Great Lord might not be a tough opponent for current players, but as an archaic species, it would give them a run for their money. Under a player's control, such a Great Lord could easily slaughter a 1,000-man team. Not even Autumn Plant would survive. However, War Blood's members didn't seem flustered. Rather, they all gave Blue Phoenix playful expressions. "Do you think we came here unprepared, Blue Phoenix?" Autumn Plant said. "I already knew about this summoning crystal of yours, but I suppose that since you've revealed your trump card, we should show you what we've prepared." As soon as Autumn Plant said so, 60 War Blood members each took a magic array scroll from their bags and activated it. Suddenly, a gigantic magic array appeared, enveloping the canyon's exit. A lightning bolt then struck the exit, shattering the ground before a colossal hand emerged. The hand belonged to a gigantic skeletal warrior that pulled itself free of the rubble. This skeletal warrior was fully geared in magical armor and wielded a two-handed battle axe. Eerie flames burned in its hallowed eye sockets. Hell's Guardian, Undead, Grand Lord. Level 96. HP 150,000/150,000,000. A Grand Lord? Blue Phoenix's expression darkened when she saw the Hell's Guardian. A Great Lord ranked archaic species might be very powerful, but it wasn't as strong as an actual Grand Lord. Moreover, the Hell's Guardian was level 96. Not even their entire 100-man team would last more than 5 moves against it. What do you think? Our adventurer team has gone to great lengths to obtain this summoning array, Autumn Plant said, sneering at Blue Phoenix. I thought you were so confident. Where did that confidence go? Do you think you can get away from me now? The Dragon Phoenix Pavilion's members were instantly disheartened. War Blood had an overwhelming advantage both in terms of numbers and trump cards. The outcome was obvious even before the fight began. As Autumn Plant spoke, the Hell's Guardian raised its battle axe and swung the weapon at Blue Phoenix, catching the Dragon Phoenix Pavilion members off guard. The Hell's Guardian's axe felt like a small mountain as it descended, generating an immense amount of wind pressure. Every player within 8 yards of the weapon struggled to move. With this added effect, the Dragon Phoenix Pavilion members couldn't even defend themselves, let alone dodge the incoming attack. Suddenly, a sword light flashed between the teams, striking the side of the colossal axe. As if it had been struck by a massive boulder, the axe's trajectory drastically deviated, and the blade landed 8 yards away from Blue Phoenix, hitting nothing but the ground. Who's there? Autumn Plant spun toward the origin of the sword light. With a dark look, he growled, "Are you so desperate to die in the sea of death, daring to interfere with War Blood's matters?" A figure then emerged from the nearby forest, fully clad in pitch-black armor and wielding a light blue sword surrounded by faint arcs of electricity. As this figure approached the battlefield, a deep voice reached everyone's ears. "I'm Zero Wings Black Flame." Chapter 2276, Difference between Tier 3. Upon hearing Shifeng's words, everyone present could not help but gape at him in astonishment. Even Blue Phoenix was surprised. Guild Leader Black Flame? After Blue Phoenix confirmed that the person who had emerged from the forest was Shifeng, her eyes filled with even greater shock. After the Storm's Serpent King raid, Shifeng had disappeared from the public eye. Despite launching a frantic manhunt, the various major powers of Dragonheart Island failed to find any traces of him even after searching relentlessly for 20 days. It was as if he had disappeared completely from God's domain. This situation had caused quite the commotion in the game. Due to this situation, many had rumored that Shifeng had hidden himself out of fear of retaliation by the various superpowers. Gossip was that he had stopped logging into the game completely. It was even bruited about that a superpower had secretly taken action against Sherfong in the real world already. She never thought that Sherfong would actually appear in this place. So, it is guild leader Black Flame. When Autumn Plant saw Sherfong approaching the battlefield, he revealed an excited expression. Guild leader Black Flame, the Sea of Death's various major powers have constantly been searching for you these days. I never thought you would be here in the Buried Bones ruin. I really am fortunate today. Before Autumn Plant had even finished speaking, for level 87 players standing behind him suddenly moved to surround Sherfong. Guild leader Black Flame, be careful. They're Warbloods for naval generals. They all possess a naval legacy and can form a natural battle array. Blue Phoenix warned hurriedly. Every one of the 4 naval generals was a team leader level individual in Warblood. Unlike other adventurer teams, those capable of becoming team leaders in Warblood were either peak experts or players strong enough to rival peak experts. Among them, the 4 naval generals were veteran team leaders of Warblood, all bona fide peak experts. Moreover, all 4 of them possessed naval legacies. Out at sea, they could contend against even domain realm experts. Meanwhile, under circumstances where they were further strengthened by a battle array, even domain realm experts would fall to them quickly. Too late. Autumn Plant said, smirking. He had deliberately spoken so much and so slowly before in order to buy the 4 naval generals time to activate the legacy battle array they possessed. In the next moment, the 4 naval generals appeared at Sherfang's 4 corners, a dark blue magic array forming beneath each of them. Suddenly, a dark blue pillar rose into the air, creating a battle array with a 300-yard radius. Immediately after, the intensity of the 4 naval generals' auras burgeoned. Their physical appearances started transforming as well. After just 3 short seconds, all 4 of them had become 6-meter-tall giants lavished with mysterious, dark blue runes. The Sea Giant Legacy? Sherfong concluded as he looked at the 4 naval generals. Although the Sea Giant Legacy was not a peak legacy, it was still a very rare advanced legacy, which had been very famous in Sherfang's previous life. Upon activating the Sea Giant Hidden Classes Legacy Battle Array, players would transform into a Sea Giant and have their life rating increased until it was only slightly inferior to that of archaic species. If the battlefield was out at sea, a Tier 2 Sea Giant would even be capable of fighting an ordinary Tier 3 player. At this moment, Sherfong more or less understood why Warblood ranked 3rd among the numerous adventurer teams on Dragonheart Island and that its naval strength could rival even that of superpowers. Warblood daring to send a team to target Blue Phoenix was also natural. With such strength, Phoenix Rain's faction alone was no match for Warblood. Phoenix Rain would have to become the Dragon Phoenix Pavilion's great pavilion master and unite the entire pavilion to be able to contend with the adventurer team. I never thought that you would know about this Sea Giant Legacy, Guild Leader Black Flame. You really are a knowledgeable person. Autumn Plant was slightly surprised when he heard Sherfang's words. At this point, most people only knew that the 4 naval generals had obtained a naval legacy but not what it was exactly. Since you know about the Sea Giant Legacy, then you should know of its capabilities. I won't trouble you too much, Guild Leader Black Flame. If you hand over the fragmented legendary item you got from the Storm's Serpent King, then I can let you all leave this place safely. You think you can stop me with just 4 sea giants? Sherfong asked, smiling. How would I dare underestimate you, Guild Leader Black Flame? The 4 naval generals would indeed have a very difficult time stopping you, but I'm afraid that you aren't aware that the current era has already changed, Autumn Plant said, looking at Sherfong with a playful expression. What do you mean? Sherfong asked, unsure what Autumn Plant was talking about. What I mean is that you are already outdated. Autumn Plant said as he suddenly fished a dark blue crystal from his bag, the crystal looking somewhat similar to the one Blue Phoenix took out earlier. He then squeezed and shattered the crystal. While you were hiding here in the Buried Bones ruin, Starlink led the various major powers to capture the Gravity Mountain Range's Gravity Temple and secured the ancient civilization's strength. In the next moment, a threefold magic array formed on Autumn Plant, then rapidly absorbed the surrounding mana and condensed it on him. As a result, the intensity of Autumn Plant's aura skyrocketed. His aura became so strong that it even surpassed the 4 naval generals and now stifled those who were bathed in it. Not good. That's a deification crystal. Blue Phoenix revealed a look of despair when she saw Autumn Plant's transformation. That's right. This deification crystal is the ancient civilization's power. Autumn Plant stated proudly as he looked at Shifeng. Thanks to the deification crystal's power, I am now a bona fide tier 3 player. Do you think you can still escape me? After saying so, Autumn Plant raised his staff and cast a spell. Suddenly, a twofold magic array appeared in the sky, enveloping a 50-yard radius. Immediately, Shifeng, Blue Phoenix, and the other members of the Dragon Phoenix Pavilion felt intense pressure assaulting their bodies. At the same time, their basic attributes also decreased by 20% and movement speed by 30%. Tier 3 Legacy Spell, Oceanic Sky Domain. Domain skills and spells were incredibly powerful. A domain spell might not seem very powerful at Tier 2, but after reaching the Tier 3 standard, it would allow a magical class's combat power to undergo a qualitative transformation. Moreover, players would no longer have to stand still while channeling the domain and could move around freely. In addition, all mana within the domain's AoE would be under the caster's control, allowing chantless spellcasting. Guild Leader Black Flame, run away quickly. The deification crystal not only transforms him into a Tier 3 player but also allows him to enter the nothingness realm, which greatly increases his spell's completion rate. Blue Phoenix hurriedly warned when she saw Autumn Plant getting ready to take action. An increase in spell completion rate would provide instantaneous improvements to a magical class player's combat power. In addition, Autumn Plant owned a naval legacy, so his current combat power was far superior to that of an ordinary Tier 3 player. Run away? Do you think that's possible? Autumn Plant sneered. In the next moment, the level 96 Hell's Guardian appeared behind Shifeng, cutting off his path of retreat completely. With the Oceanic Sky Domain in effect, there was no way he could surpass the Hell's Guardian in terms of movement speed. Now, just the Hell's Guardian alone would be more than enough to finish him off. Not to mention, Autumn Plant could also control the elemental mana inside his domain to attack Shifeng. After speaking, Autumn Plant directed the drifting mana to create 6 water torrents and sent them shooting at Shifeng. So long as Shifeng suffered an attack and revealed an opening in his defense, they would immediately move in to deal him a fatal blow. However, even when the Hell's Guardian's battle axe and the 6 water torrents were about to devour Shifeng, he did not activate a life-saving skill, contrary to everyone's expectations. Instead, he simply unsheathed the Twilight Blade and started brandishing it together with Killing Ray. Swords Transmigration. After the arduous training in the Tower of 4 Gods, Shifeng had further perfected and simplified Swords Transmigration. When he executed the technique now, the descending battle axe and the approaching water torrents all seemingly avoided him, as they merely brushed past his body without harming him in the slightest. Impossible. Autumn Plant gasped involuntarily. Autumn Plant had thought that Shifeng might defend against his attacks with a life-saving skill. He had also considered the possibility of him using a berserk skill. However, he never imagined that Shifeng could actually defend against such a powerful assault with just his 2 swords. Shifeng didn't even use a skill throughout this process. Before Autumn Plant could snap out of his daze, Shifeng executed Wind Blade with a 103% completion rate, disappearing from his original location and arriving before Autumn Plant in the blink of an eye. Shifeng's movement speed far surpassed even that of the Hell's Guardian. Secret technique, Lightning Flash. In the next moment, an all-encompassing net of sword lights flew toward Autumn Plant. In response, Autumn Plant activated Blink and instantly appeared 20 yards away from Shifeng. However, before Autumn Plant could do anything else, his body suddenly crumpled forward powerlessly because, at this moment, his HP had already reached 0. Chapter 2277, Fragmented legendary item? The instant autumn plant collapsed to the ground, silence descended across the entire battlefield. War Blood's members, who originally wore playful expressions on their faces, were thoroughly stupefied, gaping at Autumn Plant's motionless corpse. Vice Commander? The 4 naval generals, who were poised to help Autumn Plant, were similarly dumbfounded by this scene, their bodies petrified from shock. Autumn Plant died. The man nicknamed the Bloody Mage was killed, just like that. Despite having used a deification crystal to upgrade himself into a Tier 3 player temporarily, Autumn Plant still died so decisively, without even a chance to retaliate. This situation was simply unbelievable. A Tier 3 player. That was a bona fide Tier 3 player they were talking about. That was not something pseudo-Tier 3 players like themselves could hope to contend with. The 4 naval generals simply could not fathom how Shifeng had pulled off such a straightforward victory over Autumn Plant. Could the rumor be true? During the time everyone was shocked over Autumn Plant's death, someone among War Blood's members suddenly remembered the rumor that had been circulating in the outside world for quite some time now. Right. Black Flame must have gained the strength of a fragmented legendary item. That's why he's able to instantly kill the Vice Commander. A fragmented legendary item? At this moment, aside from War Blood's members, even the distant Blue Phoenix entertained such thoughts. Even the Dragon Phoenix Pavilion had not seen a fragmented legendary item before. Although one was rumored to have been among the Storm Serpent King's loot, as a member of the Dragon Phoenix Pavilion's upper echelon, she knew that this remained only a rumor. After all, even now, she had not heard of any superpower obtaining a fragmented legendary item. However, seeing how Shifeng could kill Autumn Plant instantly, she could not help wondering whether the rumors were actually true. Otherwise, she had no way to explain the situation. Previously, the concept of Tier 3 classes was still very foreign to everyone. However, as players continuously leveled up and got increasingly closer to level 100, they became more aware of just how frightening Tier 3 classes were. A Tier 3 class was something mere Tier 2 classes could not hope to compete against, standing already on a whole different level. Meanwhile, even being fully geared in epic equipment was not sufficient for one to cross the divide while still Tier 2. The only possibility of doing so was by relying on the rumored fragmented legendary items. After all, according to God's Domain's information, fragmented legendary items granted its users the ability to transcend tiers. Aren't fragmented legendary items a little too powerful? Blue Phoenix was filled with an indescribable sense of shock and envy as she gazed at Autumn Plant's corpse on the ground. The deification crystal was a consumable with a short duration of 3 hours. Obtaining even one such crystal was incredibly difficult. A fragmented legendary item, on the other hand, could be used forever. Most importantly, fragmented legendary items could actually grant a Tier 2 player combat power superior to even ordinary Tier 3 players. Suddenly, aside from Blue Phoenix, everyone else present started eyeing Shifeng with a different type of gaze. Rather than fear and awe, they looked at him with admiration and envy instead. It seems I've shown off too much. Shifeng quickly picked up the sudden change in the atmosphere and could not help revealing a bitter smile at this situation. Originally, he had thought to shock War Blood's members by instantly killing their vice commander. He never thought that his actions would give rise to a misunderstanding. Part of the reason why Shifeng could kill Autumn Plant was indeed because he possessed fragmented legendary items. However, a larger part of the reason for this was his having reached level 100 already. With all of his restrictions removed, his reaction speed naturally surpassed Autumn Plant's, who was only a level 87 player and still had his body restricted. If Autumn Plant had been level 100 as well, then Shifeng would not have had such an easy time killing the elementalist. At the very least, Autumn Plant would have evaded his lightning flash. Disregarding the envious gazes he was receiving, Shifeng turned to the 4 naval generals, who were similarly looking at him with a trace of greed in their eyes. What? You still want to continue? Shifeng asked, smirking. Shifeng's words were spoken very calmly. However, an invisible killing intent suddenly spread across the entire battlefield. Upon sensing this killing intent, the 4 naval generals shuddered involuntarily, the greed in their eyes instantly disappearing without a trace as they realized that their lives and deaths now lay in Shifeng's hands. No. We'll retreat. We'll retreat immediately, the 4 naval generals said hurriedly. Shortly after, all of War Blood's members disappeared from the Buried Bones ruin, leaving behind only Blue Phoenix and the other Dragon Phoenix Pavilion members. Guild leader Black Flame, even if you let them leave now, I'm afraid the War Blood adventurer team will not let this matter rest. Moreover, War Blood will definitely spread the news about your fragmented legendary item. At that time, Blue Phoenix said worriedly after Shifeng allowed War Blood's members to leave with their lives. Previously, everyone was still dubious about the rumor of Shifeng owning a fragmented legendary item. Even so, the various major powers and experts of dark forces had put in quite a lot of effort to search for Shifeng. Now that the rumor was verified, countless powers and experts would definitely go crazy. If news about it is going to spread, so be it. Even if I kill them, the news will still be spread. Why should I waste my time killing them? When the time comes, anyone who wishes to take action against me can try as much as they want, Shifeng said, chuckling. He paid no heed to this matter at all. Right, why are you grinding here? This place is very dangerous for players of your level. Shifeng's words rendered Blue Phoenix speechless. Although he was indeed frighteningly strong, he was still susceptible to ambushes and assassinations. Even the guild leader of a super guild would lose his life at some point if so many powers and experts targeted him. She never thought that Shifeng would actually treat this matter so lightly. Although fragmented legendary items had a low probability of dropping and Shifeng surely wouldn't lose his after dying just once or twice, he was bound to lose his fragmented legendary item eventually, the more he got killed. Not to mention, there were many tools in God's domain that could be used to increase the death penalty of players. However, Blue Phoenix could only sigh in regard to this situation. After all, this was Shifeng's problem. It was not her place to tell him how he should handle it. We are here for a quest. Originally, Big Sis Rain had already secured an advantage in the Dragon Phoenix Pavilion. However, due to Nine Dragons Emperor's close relationship with Starlink, he received a large number of resources from Starlink as support. Now, his side is prospering on Dragonheart Island while we can only run to this dangerous place. Recently, Nine Dragons Emperor even worked with Lu Xinglua to secure an ancient civilization's ruin in the Gravity Mountain Range. A short while ago, Nine Dragons Emperor suddenly called for an emergency elders meeting on Dragonheart Island. By the looks of it, he plans on taking action against Big Sis Rain. After receiving news about this, I tried to hurry back to Dragonheart Island, but ran into War Blood's members as you saw just now, Blue Phoenix explained helplessly. It seems Nine Dragons Emperor plans on snatching the position of Great Pavilion Master, Shifeng said. I think so as well. In a slightly anxious tone, Blue Phoenix continued, Guild Leader Black Flame, I need to return as quickly as possible. I won't be able to continue chatting with you. No, I'll go with you, Shifeng said, shaking his head. Upon hearing Shifeng's words, Blue Phoenix simply nodded in agreement. After all, he represented Zero Wing. Having him present would undoubtedly give Phoenix Rain more authority at the meeting. Following which, Shifeng led Blue Phoenix to the canyon's exit and summoned the Thunder Eagle, the appearance of the flying mount filling the Dragon Phoenix Pavilion's members with envy. Let's go, Shifeng said as he hopped onto the Thunder Eagle's back. He planned on bringing Blue Phoenix back to Dragonheart Island first. Chapter 2278, Shocking Dragonheart City. Dragonheart Island, Dragonheart City. The streets of the city were currently full of traffic, especially at the city's port. Ship after ship could be seen docking at the port and offloading numerous carts of cargo into the city. Most of the merchandise being transported into Dragonheart City belonged to players, aside from a portion belonging to NPCs. Meanwhile, of the player merchandise transported, a large majority consisted of the various neutral races' specialty products, such as Thunderwood, primordial magic stone, and magic steel, items that could not be stored in a player's bag space. Every one of these items was something the various major powers needed. Thunder wood was the main material needed to produce advanced speedboats and even bronze speedboats. It possessed very high magic resistance, and the ships made with this type of timber were insusceptible to magic attacks. The primordial magic stone, on the other hand, was an ideal material for tool production due to its toughness and the mana it contained. If made into a test bench, it could increase the production success rate of lifestyle players by a large margin. As for magic steel, it could be used to strengthen ship cannons. Cannons strengthened by magic steel could enhance their cannonballs with mana, significantly increasing the cannonball's power and attack speed. Due to the properties of these rare items, they were in high demand among players, yet they were all very difficult to procure in human kingdoms and empires. However, since Dragonheart City was a neutral trade city, many neutral races would ship their specialty products here to sell and earn ancient coins to exchange for other resources. Moreover, the appearance of an ancient civilization in the Gravity Mountain Range was attracting an increasingly larger number of neutral players to Dragonheart City. This situation served to boost the city's prosperity, allowing Dragonheart City to cast even imperial capitals in the shade. During the time everyone was busy traveling in and out of Dragonheart City's port, a figure suddenly popped into view on the horizon. In the next few moments, this figure could be seen approaching Dragonheart City. After just 8 short seconds, a gigantic eagle with a wingspan of 20 meters appeared before everyone. Faint, blue arcs of electricity crackled around this giant eagle's body. The frightening aura the bird gave off plunged the horse carriages moving about at the port into chaos. Players that were below level 70 even felt an intense, stifling pressure on their bodies. For a time, the entire port went into an uproar. Crap! That's a flying mount. A flying mount is actually this powerful? Doesn't that eagle look like Black Flame's mount? What? Black Flame actually came to Dragonheart Island? Is he tired of living? As the giant eagle descended before Dragonheart City's entrance, everyone quickly recognized the eagle's identity. A heated discussion immediately broke out as they looked at the black-armored man riding the giant eagle. Nowadays, everybody operating in the Sea of Death knew Black Flame's name. After all, there was nobody who would not pay attention to a fragmented legendary item. Previously, when Starlink announced that Black Flame had obtained a fragmented legendary item from the Storm Serpent King, everyone was skeptical. However, after news of Black Flame's performance in the Buried Bones ruin spread, people changed their minds. This situation ignited a burning desire in countless players. This reaction was because Black Flame's fragmented legendary item was the sole fragmented legendary item known to exist thus far. If they could get their hands on it, then their future would be limitless. After all, the strength of a fragmented legendary item enabled Black Flame to kill Autumn Plant, one of Warblood's vice commanders, without breaking a sweat. At that time, Autumn Plant had even used a deification crystal to forcibly upgrade himself into a bona fide Tier 3 player. One could easily imagine how much improvement a fragmented legendary item provided players. Due to this reason, every expert and power operating in the Sea of Death was frantically searching for Shifeng's whereabouts. Hence, his arrival in Dragonheart Island was no different from him walking straight into the tiger's den. While Dragonheart Island's security level might surpass that of imperial capitals and rival even that of Blackwing City, it did not stop players from tracking Shifeng's movements. After all, there were many tracking magic in God's domain that would not alarm NPCs. Then, so long as Shifeng dared leave the safe zones of God's domain, he would face endless pursuit and ambush. After Shifeng alighted from the Thunder Eagle, the various major powers members at the port quickly relayed this information to their superiors. What? Black Flame actually appeared in Dragonheart City? Keep an eye on him. I'll send experts to track him right away. Do not let him get away, no matter what. That fragmented legendary item is mine. Upon receiving news of Shifeng's arrival in Dragonheart City, the various major powers promptly dispatched all their expert trackers to Dragonheart City. Some powers even cancelled set plans in order to head over to Dragonheart City immediately. Guild leader Black Flame, are you really fine with this? Blue Phoenix asked worriedly as she looked at Shifeng. From the moment she alighted from the Thunder Eagle, she already sensed several hundred players staring at Shifeng. Despite not being the focus of this attention, she still could not help but feel her scalp tingle. Moreover, this was only the beginning. There would definitely be more people keeping track of Shifeng's movements later. Relax. Right now, the most they can do is stare at me, Shifeng said, utterly unperturbed by this situation. Letting out a chuckle, he set off into Dragonheart City. During his previous life, all known owners of fragmented legendary items had frequently received such stares, so this kind of trouble right now was only natural. Not to mention, he was currently the only person known to own a fragmented legendary item. This was also the reason why he constantly reminded Fire Dance and the others to keep their fragmented legendary items secret. If it were before he had reached level 100, the exposure of this secret of his would indeed have brought him a lot of trouble. However, now that he had reached level 100, nobody in God's domain could do anything against him. Even if he went out into the fields, he would not have to worry about getting ambushed by players. After all, the maps he would be visiting would be level 100 plus maps. To players below level 100 plus maps were no different from Forbidden Lands. Let alone targeting him, they wouldn't even be able to guarantee their own survival there. This was also the reason why Shifeng dared to arrive boldly at Dragonheart City using the Thunder Eagle. Blue Phoenix fell speechless at Shifeng's confident behavior. However, her evaluation of Shifeng had also risen considerably as a result. Very few people would willingly put themselves in danger to help Phoenix reign during her time of need, particularly when a fragmented legendary item was at stake. Even the guild leaders of super guilds would not dare take such a risk. Afterward, Blue Phoenix led Shifeng toward the Dragon Phoenix Pavilion's residence. At this moment, the Dragon Phoenix Pavilion's residence in Dragonheart City bustled, as various guild upper echelon members, who were rarely seen, had all gathered here. Moreover, aside from the guild's upper echelon, the pavilion's elders were also present. These people were normally scattered across the various kingdoms and empires. Their assembly here greatly excited the members in the residence. Nowadays, with the increasing popularity of God's domain in the real world, it was almost impossible for people to avoid talking about the game during their free time. Meanwhile, members of the upper echelons of large guilds were akin to celebrities. For ordinary players, just getting to see them was already worthy of conversation. As for the Dragon Phoenix Pavilion's upper echelon and elders, these people were all unreachable existences to ordinary players. During the time the players in the residence were chatting, a majestic woman with shoulder-length hair strode into the residence. The woman was clad in light blue armor and possessed a beauty that was in no way inferior to Zhao Yueru's. Upon seeing this woman's appearance, the players inside the residence gasped. "Quick, look! Even the Heavenly Knight is here. I heard that she's never been interested in the guild's internal affairs. Why is she here now?" At this moment, aside from the Dragon Phoenix Pavilion's normal members, even the pavilion's upper echelon was surprised by this majestic woman's arrival. The reason for their reactions was this beauty's extraordinary status in the Dragon Phoenix Pavilion. Titled as the Heavenly Knight by the Secret Pavilion, Windy Moon was originally Phoenix Reign's greatest competitor for the position of Phoenix Pavilion Master. However, as Windy Moon was not interested in the position, she had withdrawn from the competition and shifted her development to a neutral kingdom. As a result, Phoenix Reign became the new Phoenix Pavilion Master without any difficulty. Meanwhile, Windy Moon had defeated the various superpowers operating in the neutral kingdom she had shifted to and taken control of the entire neutral kingdom. It was only thanks to her achievements that the Dragon Phoenix Pavilion was able to secure a large number of resources unique to neutral races. Just recently, she had even broken through to the domain realm, becoming one of the true pillars of the guild. Nobody had anticipated that she would actually appear in Dragonheart City's residence today. While everyone was discussing Windy Moon's purpose here, the Heavenly Knight headed straight for Nine Dragons Emperor. Seeing this situation further amplified everyone's shock. 9 dragons, I hope you stick to your word. I'll let you know the consequences otherwise. Windy Moon said coldly as she approached 9 Dragons Emperor. Of course, 9 Dragons Emperor said, chuckling. He then gestured to the 2 men beside him. Let me introduce you. This person here is Starlink's guild leader, Lu Xinglua. This other person here is the War Blood Adventurer Team's commander, Blood Oath. I believe you should be able to rest assured with this. So that's the case. No wonder you are so confident. After Windy Moon sent a glance at Lu Xinglua and Blood Oath, she did not say anything more. With Windy Moon's arrival, the Dragon Phoenix Pavilion upper echelon present could not help but start to pity Phoenix Rain. Although the normal members of the guild were unaware of the purpose of today's meeting, those in the upper echelon like themselves were not. Today was the day when the Dragon Phoenix Pavilion's next great pavilion master would be chosen. Now, however, not only did 9 Dragons Emperor have the support of 2 superpowers, but even Windy Moon was standing on his side. Even if Ku Rong, the current great pavilion master, personally favored Phoenix Rain over 9 Dragons Emperor, he was most likely powerless to do anything about the situation. While the members of the Dragon Phoenix Pavilion's upper echelon were having a quiet discussion among themselves, a commotion suddenly occurred at the entrance of the Dragon Phoenix Pavilion's residence. In the next moment, a man and a woman came into sight, walking toward the residence. Meanwhile, following behind this man and woman were actually several thousand other players. All of these players eyed the pair like ravenous wolves. Moreover, these players were all relatively powerful experts. Some of them were even refinement realm experts. Upon seeing this crowd of experts, even the Dragon Phoenix Pavilion's top brass got goosebumps. Meanwhile, as these experts strode increasingly closer to the residence, many of the Dragon Phoenix Pavilion's members recognized the pair walking at the forefront. Black Flame. This man and woman were none other than Shifeng and Blue Phoenix. What? Zero Wings Black Flame is here. He actually dares to show his face here? Chapter 2279, Shocking Everyone with One Sentence. Shifeng's arrival caused an uproar in the Dragon Phoenix Pavilion's residence as every player discussed his arrival. Black Flame's gone insane. He actually dares to show up here. If so many people stared at me like this, I wouldn't even have the courage to get near Dragonheart City. Isn't he worried that someone will try to take his fragmented legendary item? As far as the public was concerned, the rumor of Shifeng holding a fragmented legendary item had been verified. However, not even the Dragon Phoenix Pavilion members had thought such an item would earn such a passionate reaction. Several thousand players followed after Shifeng, and none of them bothered to hide their intentions. There were even refinement realm experts among the crowd, and even the pavilion's experts felt goosebumps on their skin as they stared at the massive crowd of experts. Black Flame is too arrogant. He just killed one of our adventurer team's members, yet he dares to stand before us now. He's not taking War Blood seriously, a female ranger beside Blood Oath said grimly. She wore silvery white chainmail and carried an ancient, crystalline longbow across her back. Although this female ranger looked ordinary, barely considered a beauty, a faint, bloody mist circulated her body, adding to her appearance. Many of the Dragon Phoenix Pavilion members couldn't seem to pull their eyes off of her. However, they only dared to stare for a short moment before averting their gazes. This female ranger was Ink Feather, one of War Blood's 4 great vice guild leaders. Although she hadn't reached the domain realm yet, her combat power was just as great as an ordinary domain realm expert's due to her half-elf bloodline and ancient legacy. When it came to hunting and sniping players, she ranked among the top 5 on Dragonheart Island. She had sniped countless experts out at sea thus far, including a few domain realm experts. Feather, leave the matter be for now, Blood Oath said as he glanced at Shifeng. We're still in Dragonheart City. Lock onto his soul for now, and we'll take care of him properly later. Blood Oath had already learned about Autumn Plant's battle with Shifeng from a subordinate. Shifeng was quite powerful, but since the man had dared to kill one of Warblood's vice-commander, and news of the event had spread throughout Dragonheart City, Shifeng was a dead man in Blood Oath's eyes. I understand. Ink Feather nodded and fell silent. When Lu Xinglua overheard Blood Oath's conversation, a joyful glimmer flashed in his eyes. Starlink was frantically exploring the ancient civilization's ruins in the Gravity Mountain range, so he had no spare manpower to send after Shifeng. Thus, he couldn't be any more pleased to hear that the Warblood adventurer team wanted to go after the man. Very few powers on Dragonheart Island were a match for Warblood's prowess at sea, which was why Lu Xinglua wanted to form an alliance with the adventurer team. When Shifeng had entered the residence, Nine Dragons Emperor had shifted his gaze toward the distant Phoenix Rain. Several influential guild upper echelons stood by her side, as well as two first-rate guilds' guild leaders, yet despite such powerful allies, Nine Dragons Emperor's eyes held nothing but pity and ridicule. Phoenix Rain, your investments might have earned great returns, but those same investments will drag you down. Nine Dragons Emperor thought. He hadn't expected Shifeng to make an appearance, but now that Dragonheart Island's major powers were targeting Zero Wing, the guild couldn't help Phoenix Rain. In fact, it had become a burden. So, he is the rumored Black Flame? After glancing at Shifeng, Cloudy Moon turned her gaze to Phoenix Rain. Shaking her head, she thought, it seems this will be as far as you rise. Cloudy Moon felt an immense pressure from Shifeng, proving that he wielded great strength, but the title of Great Pavilion Master couldn't be won due to a single player. This would be a competition of foundation and influence. Cloudy Moon knew that Phoenix Rain had refused to cooperate with Starlink against Zero Wing, and as a result, Nine Dragons Emperor had taken advantage of the opportunity instead. In her opinion, abandoning a chance to cooperate with a superpower like Starlink over a lesser guild was simply foolish. The Dragon Phoenix Pavilion's upper echelons and elders pitted Phoenix Rain, as well. It seems there won't be any suspense in the competition for the Great Pavilion Master's position. What a pity. Phoenix Rain is clearly more capable than Nine Dragons Emperor. There's Zero Wing on one side, which had become Dragonheart City's public enemy, and on the other, we have the rapidly growing Starlink and Warblood adventurer team. The Great Pavilion Master wouldn't choose Phoenix Rain as his successor even if he'd lost his mind. In truth, the pavilion's upper echelons and elders had a favorable opinion of Phoenix Rain's abilities, but the difference between the two pavilion masters' overall strength was too great. This meeting was practically a farce, and it was obvious who would become the next Great Pavilion Master. While everyone discussed the matter in hushed tones, Shifeng arrived before Phoenix Rain. I've really caused you some trouble this time, Guild Leader Black Flame. Phoenix Rain was both ecstatic and grateful to see Shifeng here. Shifeng had taken a huge risk to show up here to support her. Not everyone would have the mental fortitude to do so, especially after obtaining a fragmented legendary item. A fragmented legendary item would be immensely helpful when exploring high-level maps and completing high-ranked quests. It could even help one complete their Tier 3 promotion quest. Losing a fragmented legendary item would be a huge setback for both Shifeng and Zero Wing's development. Nonsense. You've helped Zero Wing plenty of times, Phoenix Pavilion Master. Now that you are fighting for the Great Pavilion Master's position, I had to come, Shifeng said. If not for the capital and assistance Phoenix Rain had provided early on, Zero Wing wouldn't have become the guild it was today. Thank you for your support, Guild Leader Black Flame. The meeting will begin soon, so we should head inside. Phoenix Rain said as she gave Shifeng a grateful look. However, she had already abandoned any hope of winning this competition and the position. She was merely putting up her final struggle. Phoenix Rain then led Shifeng and her other supporters into the Dragon Phoenix Pavilion's guild hall, and the pavilion's elders and upper echelons followed shortly after. The Dragon Phoenix Pavilion's guild hall in Dragonheart City was a 4-story tall advanced guild hall. It might not be a match for the pavilion's other guild halls in the various NPC cities, but in Dragonheart City, it was quite extravagant. Very few first-rate guilds could afford a guild residence on Dragonheart Island, much less an advanced guild hall. By the time Phoenix Rain and her entourage entered the top-floor meeting room, several hundred players had already taken their places inside. The lowest leveled player here was level 87, fully geared in level 85 fine gold equipment. Every one of the players in the room was a refinement realm or above expert, as well, and quite a few of them were peak experts in 2 or 3 pieces of epic equipment. The sight was a testament to how powerful the Dragon Phoenix Pavilion's foundations were. Phoenix Rain and 9 Dragons Emperor's supporters had split the room, sitting on opposite sides. After a short moment, the doors that connected this meeting room to a lounge next door opened, and an elderly man entered the meeting room. This elderly man was a level 88 summoner, wearing robes that resembled a nebula. The epic staff in the man's hand was a replica of the legendary staff, Spirit Collar, and the elder's aura was no weaker than Blood Oath's, War Blood's commander. As this elderly man entered the room, silence fell. This elderly man was none other than the Dragon Phoenix Pavilion's current Great Pavilion Master, Ku Rong. 2 men, both radiating extraordinary auras, followed behind Ku Rong. Although they were only level 87, both of the men were bona fide domain realm experts. As Ku Rong lowered himself in the seat of honor, the 2 men guarded his sides. The guild upper echelons and elders didn't dare to speak or display any of their usual arrogance, merely waiting for Ku Rong to speak. I believe that you all know why I called you here for this meeting. I am getting old and can no longer take charge of the Dragon Phoenix Pavilion. Hence, I am going to choose my successor for the Great Pavilion Master position today, Ku Rong slowly explained. My successor will have to contribute greatly to the guild, providing a better future than I have. You all know this. Hence, I recommend 9 Dragons Emperor to be my successor. If there are no objections, we will consider this matter settled. None of the guild upper echelons or elders seemed surprised by Ku Rong's decision, and 9 Dragons Emperor revealed an ecstatic expression. He had waited for this moment for a long time. Suddenly, however, a low voice filled the meeting room. I have an objection. Although the words hadn't been very loud, a deathly silence had followed them, enveloping the meeting room as everyone turned toward their origin. When everyone saw who had spoken, they were shocked. The person that had objected to the decision was Black Flame. Chapter 2280, Qualification. With Shifeng's statement, silence descended over the meeting room. Nobody had expected Shifeng to stand up and object to the Great Pavilion Master's decision. Blue Phoenix and the other guild upper echelons by Phoenix Rain's side were particularly surprised, and the blood drained from their faces. In contrast, 9 Dragon Emperor supporters couldn't help but grin. It's over. Blue Phoenix stared at Shifeng, speechless. Although Ku Rong had chosen 9 Dragons Emperor as his successor in this meeting, 9 Dragons Emperor couldn't take the position for another 10 days, during which time, Phoenix Rain had the right to call another meeting with the elders. If more than half of the guild's elders decided that 9 Dragons Emperor was unfit for the position, someone stronger would be chosen. A meeting of the Dragon Phoenix Pavilion's elders was of the utmost importance in the pavilion. Not even the guild's ordinary upper echelons would qualify to participate, much less the core members. Normally, outsiders like Shifeng shouldn't have been allowed in today's meeting, but since they had been invited by the 2 pavilion masters to show their support, everyone had turned a blind eye. At most, Shifeng and the others were allowed to listen, nothing more. Since Ku Rong had chosen a successor, not even a guild upper echelon like Blue Phoenix could object, much less Shifeng. Only the pavilion masters and the guild elders were allowed to speak up. Since Shifeng had objected to the decision, not only would the guild elders look unfavorably on Phoenix Rain, but Ku Rong's opinion would likely fall, as well. Shifeng was a member of Phoenix Rain's entourage, after all. If she couldn't control her supporters, ensuring that they'd respect the Dragon Phoenix Pavilion, the guild elders and Ku Rong would doubt her power. Trying to replace 9 Dragons Emperor as the Great Pavilion Master would become a pipe dream. Guild Leader Black Flame. This is the Dragon Phoenix Pavilion. You are but an outsider. You do not qualify to object. Even as the Phoenix Pavilion Master's guest, We will remove you from this meeting if you wish to cause a scene. Martial Dragon, who sat beside Nine Dragons Emperor, snarled, sneering at Shifeng. Although Martial Dragon's statement had been a warning for Shifeng, his words reminded the guild elders and Great Pavilion Master that he was Phoenix Rain's supporter. This implied that this disruption was due to Phoenix Rain's inability to control her people. Ku Rong frowned in response. Shifeng's interruption had soured his mood, and the guild elders chatted quietly amongst themselves. What does Black Flame think the Dragon Phoenix Pavilion is? Zero Wing can barely rival a superpower, yet he dares to show such arrogance before us. How does Phoenix Rain normally manage her pavilion? I can't believe she brought such a disruptive supporter to such an important meeting. I had thought she was quite capable, but it seems that Nine Dragons Emperor is more suited for the position. I know, right? Nine Dragons Emperor has managed to ally himself with Starlink and Warblood. With such success, Phoenix Rain has no hope of catching up. For a time, the various guild elders began to question Phoenix Rain's authority and re-evaluate their criticisms of Nine Dragons Emperor. Even Cloudy Moon, who had remained indifferent, turned to look at Phoenix Rain. Cloudy Moon had previously been impressed by Phoenix Rain's judgment of others, but it seemed that she had been severely mistaken. Shifeng was a courageous fool, all brawn and no brains. First, he had provoked Dragonheart Island's various major powers. Then, ignorantly, he returned to Dragonheart Island, revealing himself. Now, he had even upset the Dragon Phoenix Pavilion's elders. But despite the opinions everyone in the room expressed about him, Shifeng didn't react in the slightest. Instead, he calmly turned to Martial Dragon. Everyone is aware that Zero Wing has allied with the Dragon Phoenix Pavilion. Thus far, our guilds have enjoyed a good working relationship with the Phoenix Pavilion Master on Thunder Island. Why can't Zero Wing object since it is uncomfortable with the proposed successor? Shifeng asked, chuckling. If he is to become the Great Pavilion Master, Zero Wing will have to reconsider selling the pavilion 100 bronze speedboats. As Shifeng finished speaking, the meeting room's occupants gasped. What? 100 bronze speedboats? Impossible. Even our guild doesn't have 100 bronze speedboats in total. The Dragon Phoenix Pavilion's members were flabbergasted by the idea of 100 bronze speedboats. Their reaction wasn't due to a lack of experience, but because Shifeng had mentioned such a frightening number. Although the various superpowers had constructed powerful fleets, they mostly consisted of advanced and ordinary speedboats. Most fleets had less than a handful of bronze speedboats. Even the superpowers' top fleets only had a dozen or so. Even Starlink and Warblood, organizations that had the most powerful naval forces in the Sea of Death, only had 30 or so bronze speedboats. Not even a super guild like 13 Thrones could form a force of nothing but bronze speedboats, much less Starlink. Superpowers needed to consider their average strength. They couldn't just assign all of their bronze speedboats to a single force, much less sell an entire fleet of such ships to another power. Only a lunatic would do something like that. Bronze speedboats were a power's main combatants at sea. The number of bronze speedboats a power owned determined how much influence it commanded, and the greater one's influence was at sea, the more naval resources they could obtain. Needless to say, they would also wield far greater authority. Ku Rong turned toward Phoenix Rain, and although he said nothing, his intentions were clear. He wanted to know what was going on. Why hadn't he been made aware of such a monumental deal before this meeting? Unfortunately, Phoenix Rain didn't have an answer for her Great Pavilion Master. Shifeng's declaration had shocked her just as much as it had stunned him. She didn't remember discussing a massive transaction, involving 100 bronze speedboats, with Shifeng. If she had, she wouldn't have acted as passively as she was. Fortunately, Phoenix Rain hid her emotions and adjusted her shocked expression. She then gave Ku Rong a look that confirmed Shifeng's claim. However, she was still confused. She did not know what Shifeng was trying to do, and she felt that he was playing with fire. In contrast, Nine Dragons Emperor's expression had darkened. Impossible. There is no way Zero Wing can produce 100 bronze speedboats. Nine Dragons Emperor instinctively stood to deny Shifeng's words. If Zero Wing has so many bronze speedboats, it would have prospered on Dragonheart Island, yet Zero Wing doesn't even have a guild residence in the city. That's right. Guild leader Black Flame, this behavior is shameless. You spout lies just to prevent the Dragon Pavilion Master from becoming the Great Pavilion Master, Lu Xinglua added. Everyone in the room agreed with Nine Dragons Emperor's statement. If Zero Wing had so many bronze speedboats under its command, it would have become an overlord in the Sea of Death. Is that so? Shifeng asked, flashing Nine Dragons Emperor and Lu Xinglua a confident look. He then pulled an ancient, dilapidated tome from his bag, sharing its details on the meeting room's holographic screen. What is this, then? When the room's occupants saw the information displayed, they were dumbfounded. It was the design for the bronze-ranked Storm speedboat. May I know if I qualify to object, now? Shifeng asked as he surveyed the people in the room. Chapter 2281, Going Too Far? Shifeng's voice echoed throughout the quiet meeting room for a long time. No one dared to question or complain about his presence. Even Nine Dragons Emperor, who had wanted to silence the man, couldn't find the strength to open his mouth. While Shifeng might not have 100 bronze speedboats right now, he could produce them without a problem with the bronze speedboat design in his hand. Even if securing the necessary materials were a challenge, crafting the bronze speedboats would be much easier than questing or grinding powerful field bosses for them. With the necessary materials, one was guaranteed to obtain a bronze speedboat. In comparison, quests that awarded bronze speedboats were extremely rare, and their drop rate from field bosses was abysmally low. To the Dragon Phoenix Pavilion, 100 bronze speedboats were immeasurably valuable. With another 100 bronze speedboats, the pavilion could instantly become a top-ranked superpower in the Sea of Death. Would the Dragon Phoenix Pavilion dare to slight Shifeng when he had such a card? Nine Dragons Emperor was very familiar with the pavilion's upper echelons and elders, and God's domain only respected the strong. It was far more important to grow stronger as an individual, rather than rely on others. Blue Phoenix and her companions, who sat opposite of Nine Dragons Emperor, only snapped out of their daze after losing themselves to the holographic projection. They immediately turned to Shifeng with an intense excitement in their eyes. Black Flame is too awesome, Big Sis Rain. Not even Starlink and War Blood support can help Nine Dragons Emperor now, Blue Phoenix whispered to Phoenix Rain. Blue Phoenix had never thought that Shifeng would have such an amazing trump card. The Storm speedboat design was a priceless treasure that could strongly influence the status quo in the Sea of Death. If the Storm speedboat design hadn't been in Shifeng's bag space, essentially reducing its chances of dropping to zero, Blue Phoenix had no doubt that everyone in the room would have pounced on him. Don't get too excited. We still need to hear the Great Pavilion Master and Guild Elders' thoughts on this. I don't think they would have chosen Nine Dragons Emperor as the next Great Pavilion Master so quickly simply because he's gained Starlink and War Blood support, Phoenix Rain quietly replied. The Dragon Phoenix Pavilion wasn't as powerful as Starlink, and its naval strength was no match for War Blood. However, it was still a super first-rate guild. Moreover, the pavilion had been growing stronger recently. Hence, Nine Dragons Emperor's alliance with Starlink and War Blood wasn't that surprising. If the Dragon Phoenix Pavilion wanted to, it could easily form alliances with various super guilds, let alone these two organizations. Ku Rong knew that. Phoenix Rain could only assume that Nine Dragons Emperor had revealed some reason or item that forced Ku Rong to make such a hasty decision. There was also the fact that Cloudy Moon had joined them to show her support for Nine Dragons Emperor. Cloudy Moon had never cared about who would become the next Great Pavilion Master. The decision simply wouldn't affect her standing in the pavilion, especially since she'd reached the domain realm. Her position in the guild was practically unshakable. But not even the Great Pavilion Master can ignore how tempting 100 bronze speedboats are, right? Blue Phoenix said. Phoenix Rain's statement had helped her realize how peculiar this meeting was, but she couldn't help her excitement. Shifeng had clearly stated that if Ku Rong chose 9 Dragons Emperor as the next great pavilion master, the matter of the 100 bronze speedboats was moot. This was an opportunity for the Dragon Phoenix Pavilion to rise to the top out at sea. There was no way the offer wouldn't tempt Ku Rong. After the silence stretched on for a moment, Ku Rong, who hadn't said a word, finally spoke. Guild leader Black Flame, as an invited guest and the Dragon Phoenix Pavilion's ally, of course, you qualify to express your opinions in this meeting. Since Martial Dragon was unaware of our rules, I ask that you forgive him, Ku Rong stated, giving Shifeng a friendly smile. The guild elders and upper echelons stared at their great pavilion master in astonishment. None of them had thought that Ku Rong would admonish Martial Dragon. Martial Dragon was 9 Dragons Emperor's capable and trusted aide, as well as the commander of 9 Dragon Emperor's main force. He took care of the Heavenly Dragon Pavilion Master's normal affairs. As a domain realm expert, he was also a pillar of strength in the guild. Martial Dragon would know the Dragon Phoenix Pavilion's rules more intimately than most people in the guild. Ku Rong's statement only proved how much he valued the 100 bronze speedboats. I see, so he didn't know of the rules. If that's the case, I can understand. Revealing a faint smile, Shifeng turned to Martial Dragon and said, __I, 11 forgive him with an apology. Shifeng hadn't minded Martial Dragon's rudeness, but he wanted the Dragon Phoenix Pavilion's elders and upper echelons to understand what Zero Wing was. Otherwise, these people continued to take his guild lightly, and they wouldn't recognize the significance of Zero Wing's alliance with Phoenix Rain. Martial Dragon had just made himself the best tool to get this point across. Don't go overboard, Black Flame. Martial Dragon bellowed as veins popped across his forehead. The room's temperature dropped several degrees as his cold killing intent swept toward Shifeng. Martial Dragon commanded the War Dragon Legion, the Heavenly Dragon Pavilion's main force. He was also a domain realm expert. Only the Great Pavilion Master, the guild founders, and the 2 Pavilion Masters held a higher position than he did in the guild. A public apology to Shifeng would ruin his reputation in the Dragon Phoenix Pavilion. He would not be able to show his face in the guild ever again. Even the pavilion's guild elders and upper echelons thought that Shifeng was going a little overboard. The Great Pavilion Master had taken a step back and acknowledged Shifeng's qualifications to express his opinion in this meeting, yet Shifeng refused to let the matter rest, pushing the envelope. Even Ku Rong's expression darkened slightly. Phoenix Rain wanted to advise Shifeng against this tactic. Since Ku Rong had recognized Zero Wing's position, this meeting would likely conclude without a victor. There was no need to arouse everyone's disgust and aversion. But Shifeng didn't give her the chance. Going too far? Shifeng could not help but chuckle. Looking at Martial Dragon, his gaze turned cold as he said, you know you've erred, yet you refuse to apologize. Do you think I, Black Flame, am a pushover? Or does the Dragon Phoenix Pavilion think that Zero Wing's guild leader is of no importance? Shifeng then released his horrific aura, which spread throughout the room as if some primordial beast had woken from its slumber. Everyone in the room felt an immense pressure bear down on them, resulting from the considerable difference in life rating and basic attributes. This pressure felt even more powerful than that of a Grand Lord of the same level. Some of the refinement realm experts even felt their legs tremble. Fortunately, everyone was currently seated. Otherwise, many of them would have caved in, collapsing. Furthermore, Shifeng exposed his true level for all to see. Level 100. When they saw the eye-catching number, the room's occupants felt as if a mountain had fallen on their heads. $2,282 insane. Level 100? How is this possible? Even the highest leveled player on Dragonheart Island is only level 89. And he only reached that level yesterday. How could Black Flame have already reached level 100? Since Shifeng had revealed his level, anyone who took a close look could see his statistics. Chaos tore through the meeting room as its occupants saw his level. All of these players were refinement realm experts or stronger, so they knew just how difficult it was to level up as one progressed in the game. At their levels, acquiring 2 or 3 levels more than ordinary experts was an amazing feat. They might have been able to earn 5 or 6 levels more than ordinary experts around level 50, but the gap would shrink as they leveled up. For example, current ordinary experts on Dragonheart Island had only reached level 85, while even these refinement realm experts were only 2 or 3 levels higher than that. And yet, they had just learned that Sherfong was more than 10 levels higher than they were. How is his level so high? The revelation even surprised Phoenix Rain. She knew that Sherfong was mysterious and powerful, but the fact that he had reached level 100 at this stage of the game was too much of a shock for her. The fact that Sherfong had reached level 100 when no one had even climbed to level 90 not only proved that his leveling speed was superior, but he was also far stronger as an individual. It was common knowledge that not all experts were high-level players, but all high-level players were undoubtedly experts. Ignoring all else, Sherfeng's level meant that his basic attributes were far ahead of everyone else's. Moreover, as a level 100 player, he qualified to explore level 100 plus maps, which no one else could set foot in at this stage of the game. This meant that he could get his hands on resources that none of God's domain's current powers even knew existed, giving Zero Wing a huge advantage. Ordinary powers might not have realized it yet, but the various superpowers knew that the higher leveled a map was, the more precious its resources would be. Some high-level maps even contained unimaginably powerful items. Take the ancient civilizations tools that players had recently discovered, for example. Players had only encountered these tools after they had started to explore level 90 maps. In other words, Zero Wing could obtain resources that the various superpowers had no access to yet. Once he saw Sherfeng's level and realized the implications of it, Martial Dragon, who had wanted to berate Sherfeng further, kept his mouth shut. He only dared to glare at the swordsman, nothing more. The bronze speedboat design Sherfeng had revealed earlier would, at most, for the guild upper echelons and elders to forgive his transgressions and treat Zero Wing as a valuable asset. However, now that they knew Sherfeng had reached level 100, they had no choice but to treat Zero Wing like an equal. At the very least, Zero Wing had the capital and strength to stand up to the various superpowers in the Sea of Death. A design was just that, after all. Mass-producing the Storm speedboat required an astronomical amount of precious resources, and obtaining these resources would be a challenge, even for the Dragon Phoenix Pavilion. However, Sherfeng had the strength to do so. Including Zero Wing's already formidable naval strength, the guild would likely have an easier time collecting the necessary resources to mass-produce the Storm speedboats. Even without other power support, Zero Wing could produce 100 bronze speedboats, becoming one of the Sea of Death's apex overlords. Now that the various upper echelons and elders understood Zero Wing's status, they'd have to treat Sherfeng and his guild seriously. How is this possible? How is his level so high? Nine Dragons Emperor was dazed when he saw Sherfeng's level. He couldn't believe his eyes. Even Cloudy Moon, who sat beside the Heavenly Dragon Pavilion Master, stared at Sherfeng in astonishment. Level 100. Phoenix Rain really knows how to take people by surprise. She actually recruited such a powerful ally. It's no wonder why she's remained calm throughout the meeting. Cloudy Moon glanced at Phoenix Rain, who, in reality, had gone stiff with shock, in admiration. After the commotion continued for a moment, Ku Rong, who had maintained his light smile, hesitated as he said, "Marshal, how about you just?" After giving the matter some thought, Ku Rong thought it was wisest to make Martial Dragon apologize for his earlier slight. Sherfeng was Zero Wing's guild leader, and Martial Dragon had provoked him first. Suddenly, however, a rough voice echoed throughout the meeting room. "You really have a bad temper, guild leader Black Flame. Commander Marshall has merely misspoken, yet you're demanding an apology from one of the Dragon Phoenix Pavilion's pillars of strength. If I didn't know any better, I would have assumed you were the Dragon Phoenix Pavilion's great pavilion master." The rough, middle-aged man beside Nine Dragons Emperor spoke up, poking fun at Sherfeng. The Dragon Phoenix Pavilion's upper echelons and elders nodded in agreement. The Dragon Phoenix Pavilion was a super first-rate guild, and Martial Dragon commanded one of its two main forces. He was a domain realm expert, a true pillar in the guild. Demanding a public apology was too much. This person certainly knows how to counter. Not only has he suppressed Black Flame, but he's also minimized the severity of Martial Dragon's insult. Phoenix Rain turned to the rough man as the guild upper echelons and elders began to discuss the situation amongst themselves. Phoenix Rain could tell that Shifeng was trying to improve the upper echelons and elders' opinion of Zero Wing. It would give her a better chance of undermining Nine Dragons' Emperor and replacing him as the next great pavilion master. However, this middle-aged man had elevated the conflict between Shifeng and Martial Dragon to one between Zero Wing and the Dragon Phoenix Pavilion. Now, even if the upper echelons and elders hadn't seen a problem with pushing Martial Dragon to apologize, they'd have to support Martial Dragon. If this insult concerned the guild's reputation, they couldn't afford to concede. "And you are?" Shifeng asked as he turned to the rough, middle-aged man. "Blood Oath, commander of the War Blood Adventurer team," the man responded, smiling faintly. The many guild upper echelons and elders that supported Nine Dragons' Emperor mimicked the grin. Shifeng had only been allowed to act so arrogantly because he had an item that could tempt the pavilion, and Martial Dragon's status wasn't as high as his. However, Blood Oath was a different story. Blood Oath commanded War Blood, the third-ranked adventurer team on Dragonheart Island. The adventurer team had just as many experts as the Dragon Phoenix Pavilion, and its naval prowess was even slightly stronger than the pavilion's. Even Ku Rong had to treat Blood Oath with respect, and now that he had spoken, Shifeng could no longer suppress Nine Dragons' Emperor's position. "So, you're War Blood's commander," Shifeng said nonchalantly. "Your adventurer team ambushed Commander Blue Phoenix's people in the Buried Bones ruin and nearly took her life. She's a friend of mine, you know. I had planned to seek you out, but since you're here, things have become a lot simpler. Compensate for the damage and apologize to my friend." As Shifeng finished speaking, a deathly silence descended upon the room again, and everyone turned to stare at him with stupefied expressions. Insane. He was insane. Chapter 2283, Power of Level 100, What is Black Flame trying to do? Is he trying to start a war? Is he insane? Doesn't he know who Blood Oath is? The Dragon Phoenix Pavilion's upper echelons and elders couldn't bring themselves to look at Blood Oath. None of them had thought Shifeng would go so far as to provoke the man. Even Nine Dragons' Emperor, who sat across from Phoenix Rain, stared at Shifeng in shock. They were all aware that Blood Oath had targeted Blue Phoenix. Ku Rong, in particular, must have watched the battle multiple times, but what difference did that make? It was common for the various powers to attack their rivals in the fields. With War Blood supporting Nine Dragons' Emperor, its assault against Phoenix Rain's aid wasn't unusual. However, there was a limit to how far the various powers would go. As long as they kept the situation in the dark, everyone involved would turn a blind eye. And yet, Shifeng had brought the attack into the light. He refused to conform, and because of this, the pavilions and War Blood's members wore ugly expressions. It would have been fine if Shifeng had simply insisted on an apology from Martial Dragon. He was, after all, a guild leader, while Martial Dragon was merely an upper echelon. It was understandable to expect Martial Dragon to apologize, but it was an entirely different story to demand an apology from Blood Oath. Setting aside War Blood's attack on Blue Phoenix, very few people on Dragonheart Island dared to disrespect Blood Oath. Even Ku Rong feared the man in the Sea of Death. Yet, not only did Shifeng demand an apology from Blood Oath, but he also wanted Blood Oath to apologize to Blue Phoenix, not the Dragon Phoenix Pavilion. Not even Melancholy, 13 Thrones Guild leader, would dare to do such a thing. The meeting room was frighteningly silent, and the temperature seemed to drop steadily. Even the Void Realm experts in the room felt stifled, not to mention the Refinement Realm experts. Their reactions weren't a result of the powerful pressure in the room, but because the meeting room's atmosphere had become oppressive. They had no doubt that the slightest movement would spark a fight. After a long period of silence, Blood Oath opened his mouth and asked, "What if I refuse? What will you do about it?" Blood Oath's questions were simple and straightforward. Not only did his statement blatantly provoke Sherfong, the smile he wore and his frosty tone made the room feel even colder. Even the guild upper echelons around Phoenix Rain struggled to breathe, their vision fading. Their heartbeats grew increasingly louder as if their hearts would jump out of their chests. The killing intent and pressure they felt from Blood Oath was almost 10 times stronger than that of mythic monsters. Ku Rong's expression twisted into something unpleasant. He had never thought that Sherfong would be this bold. Blood Oath was a murderous god in the Sea of Death. He didn't even respect Super Guild's guild leaders, let alone the Dragon Phoenix Pavilion. Trying to force a public apology out of this murderous god was suicidal. Even if Ku Rong stepped forward to ease the tension, he'd be powerless to calm Blood Oath's fury. It's simple. Sherfong could not help his grin after hearing Blood Oath's statement. I'll just drag you over here to apologize. The room's occupants nearly collapsed with shock after listening to Sherfang's reply. They stared at him in astonishment, with no idea of what he was trying to accomplish. That was War Blood's commander they were talking about. As an individual, Blood Oath was the third-ranked berserker on Dragonheart Island. Not only did he wear 6 pieces of epic equipment, but he also wielded the magic dragon spear, a well-known magic weapon in the Sea of Death. Moreover, he had a special bloodline related to the sea god. He was basically invincible at sea. On top of that, at least one vice guild leader and 3 bodyguards were constantly by his side. Although the bodyguards couldn't rival domain realm experts, they had a mysterious item that allowed them to manifest a special domain. This domain could suppress their enemies in every aspect, as well as form a barrier around specific targets. This barrier could even withstand mythic monsters' attacks. Blood Oath was practically impossible to kill, much less capture. Good. Very good. Blood Oath laughed, his killing intent so intense that it even made Phoenix Rain shudder. It's been a long time since anybody has dared to joke with me in the Sea of Death. If you don't mind, Great Pavilion Master Ku Rong, I'd like to take Guild Leader Black Flame to War Blood's headquarters and teach him the rules on Dragonheart Island. Ink Feather and Blood Oath's 3 bodyguards moved as soon as the words left their commander's mouth. Dragonheart City's NPC soldiers would kill anyone who attacked another player within the city, but the guild residences, which were private property, were an exception. Players were free to do whatever they wished within their own guild residence. Ku Rong's expression darkened when he heard Blood Oath's request. The commander might sound like he was asking for permission, but he was merely notifying the room of his intentions. Each of Blood Oath's bodyguards retrieved a crystalline totem from their bags, sacrificing 1,000 magic crystals to the items. The crystalline totems then formed a domain that enveloped the meeting room, and everyone felt as if a weight had dropped on their shoulders. Not only had the domain reduced their basic attributes by 15%, but their physiques had also weakened by 20%. To make matters worse, the gravitational force they experienced had significantly increased, making movement inconvenient. The moment the domain took form, Ink Feather squeezed and shattered a deification crystal, forcibly upgrading herself to Tier 3. She then pulled multiple purple, crystalline arrows from her bag. Many of the players in the room gasped when they saw the arrows. Starburst arrows. These arrows had been created by an ancient civilization that had lived in the Gravity Mountain range. Each arrow contained incredible power and could elevate its user's attack by 1 tier to a maximum of Tier 4. Because of this, the Starburst arrows cost an exorbitant sum on the market. One could even trade 20 Starburst arrows for a piece of ordinary epic equipment. What truly surprised the meeting room's occupants was the act that Ink Feather had 12 of these arrows. Don't think that you're unstoppable just because you're level 100. I will ensure that you suffer the consequences for provoking War Blood. Ink Feather said, her lips curling slightly as she glared at Sherfong. She pulled back the string of her ancient bow and activated the Tier 3 skill, Heart-Seeking Arrow. Heart-Seeking Arrow gave players full control over the arrow they fired during the skill's activation and allowed the player to control a maximum of 36 arrows at once. Although Ink Feather couldn't yet control all 36 arrows, she'd have no problems controlling 12 with perfect precision. 12 starburst arrows flew toward Shifeng, each with enough power to knock back a mythic monster. All 12 arrows could even instant kill a true Tier 3 player. Everyone in the room squeezed their eyes shut as the arrows flew. A level 100 player might be very strong, but not all fights in God's domain required a frontal confrontation. One could use tools to end a fight. However, just before the 12 arrows found their target, Shifeng brandished Killing Ray. Shadow Blade. Immediately, 12 sword lights flashed as Shifeng achieved a 100% completion rate with Shadow Blade. Each sword light slammed into one of Ink Feather's starburst arrows, altering their trajectories. You have quite a bit of power behind your attacks. Unfortunately, raw power isn't enough to win all battles in God's domain, Shifeng said, glancing at the starburst arrows as they brushed past him. Although he was not a Tier 3 player, the difference between a level 100 player and a lower-leveled player wasn't easy to make up. Shifeng then activated Wind Blade and charged at Blood Oath. Don't think I'll let you get close to the commander so easily. As Shifeng approached, the 3 bodyguards formed a barrier before Blood Oath, separating the two. In response, Shifeng swung Killing Ray again. Lightning Slash. A massive thunderbolt tore through the magic barrier, stupefying the bodyguards. At the same time, Blood Oath reacted, lifting his magic dragon spear to counterattack. Unfortunately, he wasn't fast enough to keep up with Shifeng, even with the domain suppressing the swordsman. Shifeng's Twilight Blade pushed aside the spear, and his sacred sword stopped right before it touched Blood Oath's throat.